Hello, Frank. Thank you so much for joining me on Spirit Wisdom. It,
Yeah, thank you for having me.
yeah, it is such an honor, and it is so beautifully random how this came about today. And yeah, there's zero script here, no planning. We'll just go into it, see what comes up. Coffee style chat, my favorite.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd love to know more about you.
Um, okay. Well, I am what'd you call that? Hmm. Well, it's always hard to self-describe, right? But well, I'm a 38-year-old guy. I consider myself kind of older now because most of my students are like in their 20s. I'm a magician, metaphysicist, occultist, whatever you want to call that. I consider that kind of like part of the science of the future, just something we haven't figured out yet. And maybe in the past, way back, some societies had figured it out. But I mean, that's up for speculation, right? But yeah, I started on this path when I was 13. That's an interesting story in itself, where um one of my teachers actually introduced me to it. Well, let me just go into that, right? So I was in sixth grade, and one of my teachers retired. She was an old lady, and on her last day in school, she's like, I've observed you, and you seemed really awake, and I want to invite you to my house. Which is kind of weird, right? Random. I don't even know if that would work these days, where it's kind of it's not normal to invite a 12-year-old kid to your house, right? Like, it's suspicious. However, I liked her, and I went. And well, she invited me in. There was another gentleman sitting there, a little bit older, and her. And then she started talking. Now she was retired, so I don't know. I guess she could talk about whatever she wanted, and told me about her past lives in Russia. And Frank, magic is real. All of this stuff is real. And I see that you're really awake and you need to learn this stuff. And well, she basically set me down and handed me a deck of tarot cards and told me to pick one. And I picked the light bearer. And before she did that, she said, you got to pick your destiny now. And ever since then, Lucifer was one of my biggest teachers, has been to this day. And then kind of like my training started, and well, the rest is history. I've been teaching on the internet, or started my YouTube channel in 2015. And yeah, it's called The Grail of the Serpent. And I use that as a vessel to transfer what I have learned on this path. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. It sounds like something out of a movie.
Totally, yeah. That's the truth,
Yeah.
though. Yeah.
That's so crazy. So I watched some of your YouTube channel, and I know that you're a big advocate for like grounded spirituality, being very straight up. I always see you talking about meditation, meditation, meditation. What is it that you're generally like noticing as a theme for the people that are coming to you? Like what they're needing, what you're offering?
People need a reality check, first and foremost. That's what people need in general. I think we live in a society that's completely delusional. It's an inflow society where people just consume and don't really understand that there needs to be a balance in the universe. Inflow has to equal outflow unless you explode. And that is what's going on with people. They're completely delusional. They have lost contact with how reality actually works. So just because it's magic, it doesn't mean that there are no rules. There are actual rules that apply to this craft. They're also dangerous, but the dangers are a little bit, I mean, if it's actually not much more difficult than driving a car, if you know what you're doing. However, most people, I would say, have an unrealistic understanding of life and how much the craft is actually a reflection of the mind of the individual, right? So the idea that you're able to command a metaphysical force such as a demon that is immortal and has incredible powers, if you can't even control yourself, if you can't control your emotions and your mind, is is literally delusional, you know. So inflow equals outflow. Every force, every resistance that you have to overcome has to be overcome through effort, right? And constraining a spirit, even just a ritual, a candle spell that you would do, requires a lot of energy and effort. And people don't understand that it takes a lot of effort, training, and exercise to be able to do those things. You know, this is not really what people want to hear, but at the end of the day, I really don't give a shit. I just tell them what they need. I prefer to give people what they need rather than telling them what they want to hear, because then I would sound like most people in the occult community, you know, like most people that came on the scene for, you know, in the last couple of years, let's say the last 6-7 years, they're completely full of shit. I say it straight up, and they know it too. They know it. They're just selling people a fantasy. Yeah, I talked to this demon, that demon, but there's zero evidence to it. They don't get stuff done. I'm probably the only one. I have never seen people that get testimonials like me, not to toot my own horn, but I mean, what needs to be said is that if other people can't confirm what you're doing, it's just not reality. Reality requires that more than one person agrees on what's happening, right? Otherwise, it's just like, what's the difference between a magician and the person that's sitting in the corner, homeless, and talking to fucking, you know, airy fairies or something like that, right? So the point is, you have to prove what you're claiming. Also, I'm a martial artist, and in martial arts, an old traditional martial arts is that you go to the other gym or you go to the other school and you test yourself. You test yourself with them. You can't just in a vacuum stand there and be like, oh, I'm the greatest, I'm the strongest, and never test yourself, you know. And that's how the craft evolves. That's how you evolve. And that's how your practice is grounded in reality. You just got to give it a reality check. And that's really what most people are not doing. Plus, I don't really think they understand the actual power of this stuff. This is what literally puts royalty in the position that they're in. This is what ruled and has ruled the world forever. Okay. You can see a clear correlation between where magical knowledge is moving and where world powers arise. There's a clear correlation. This is no joke. This is actual power that can be used, but most people see it as I guess, an alternative lifestyle and think it's fun, you know, charmed and all this bullshit, right? But at the end of the day, I think reality checks, they benefit everything. They benefit the individual, and we're here to learn, right? I mean, that's what we're here. We're here to grow, regardless of what situation we're in, right? We're here to grow. We're here to become stronger. That's my personal belief. And even if people would call it differently, like some people call it evolution, some people call it becoming love or whatever. Yeah, but strength, love and strength are one and the same thing. And only the strong people can be good. You know, weak people always lie. Weak people are dishonest, and weak people bullshit themselves and the world. And there's nobody that benefits from weak people. And this world is not easy, absolutely. No matter what the situation of the person, you know, we all have our tests, trials, and things that we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, it's about accepting the lessons and growing through those lessons. And magic is doing that, maybe in a more advanced way, maybe in a more conscious way. But at the end of the day, it's all as within, so without. Whether you're a toddler and you don't understand the connection between outside world and inside world yet, and all you think all that exists is your own desires and your own, like, I'm hungry or whatever, right? Or you're older and you begin to understand and had some chances to study the feedback mechanisms that you're putting into place, right? Or putting into action. And the sad thing is that most people grow up, become adults, still not understanding that it is as within, so without, and that their inner state has something to do with what happens in their life. It's not like, obviously a lot of people understand that, right? But there are literal so-called adults who are still at a toddler level when it comes to that awareness. So I guess the reality check is necessary for people to evolve spiritually, excuse me. And in that sense, magic and the occult is really the best way of growing up. And in many ways, it's the only way of really growing up.
Wow, beautifully said. the sane occultism is the vibe. And I love how you brought in like the layers of validation for your practice, like bringing in more of like the evidence, what's tangible, grounding, you know, what you've done in the etheric here. I had actually been very lost in the new age at the beginning of my own awakening. And when shit started to hit the fan and I was having experiences with entities, because I was tapping into things being very naive and not having respect or having studied to know how to discern spirits, how to work with them, how to be safe, how to take care of the trash that's in your own mind, you know, learning what you're going to be a match to. It was like such a enlightening experience putting my hand on the burner and going through it firsthand as a very immature practitioner. But I would like wish there would have been teachers like you around at that time, because I found myself very scared, but I passed through like that. It's almost like that initiation. It's like, do you have a tough stomach? If you're going to work in magic and with spirits, do you have a tough stomach? Because you're going to be working with polarities, and in that you will find the monster and you'll find the miracle. And I think it's a beautiful thing, but it's also very scary, and you need to have people that are going to set you straight, be very straight up, cut through your own bullshit. And in the new age, it's wild because you see so many people bypass what they need to do to clean up their lives. Like they're all talking about wanting to create like a new earth paradigm while they're sitting in a triangle in Mount Shasta talking to the Pleiadians, but they're not going to pay your bills. Like you got to do that. You need to set up the structures in your life to be able to master the 3D so that you can stand firm in the etheric. I don't know. But that's been a huge journey and a big lesson for myself, and working through different perspectives to get myself to a place where I'm really ready to take it seriously and be responsible for myself in so many ways, learning like you can't bypass the work. Energetic protection, your best defense is a strong mind. And you know, a lot of people don't well, probably can't handle a lot of it because it's we live in a world that's like quite dark. And when I pray to my creator and to be shown the truth, which is something I like adamantly asked for over and over and over again, it was like the darker things got. And then I developed like a love for what was dark, misunderstood, taboo, swept under the carpets, because that's a lot of what people just don't like. They don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But I found in that was my enlightenment. And when I heard a lot of like your talks, just bringing that, it's almost like bringing the cringe down into like the normal. That really helped me accept, you know, my humanness, which I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge. I listened to one of your talks today, which kind of prompted this whole thing. And you were talking about fairness in a way I've never heard it really discussed before. And I didn't know if that would be something you wanted to kind of share a little bit on here, in like how that relates to like nature and magic.
Sure. Well, I think fairness is a human concept, and we all suffer from a problem, which is very human, but we suffer from something called, I would call it anthropocentric projections, which is essentially we try to impose our own ideas on worlds and a system that doesn't really follow any of our understandings. I mean, first of all, we have been socialized in the Judeo-Christian context, and the roots of this religion reach very, very deep in our culture. So many things that we learn, that we just soak up in our growing up, are soaked in that religion, which is not really a negative thing. All I'm saying is that we have to understand that this is an artificial construct, and to a large extent that makes us unique, because we can structure large social groups based on completely invented ideas, which makes us very, very powerful, right? I mean, how do you rule a society, or not rule, but how do you prevent a society of, let's say, millions of people from, just killing each other, because that would happen in a natural setup. I mean, just look at history. You give them certain ideas, you feed them certain beliefs, and based on that, they interact. Now, obviously, I'm not against that. Obviously, I think that there's a lot of benefit to that, because, I mean, as a group, or as a coherent group like that, we survive better. However, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of programming in order to suppress the instincts that we have that are just there, right? So. Or let's say the concept of marriage or something like that, right? This is an artificial concept, and people are able, I mean, not everybody, right? And it's becoming less and less common, but people are actually able to stay with one partner for a very, very long time and suppress their instincts to have sex with others, which is, neither men nor women are monogamous, if that makes sense, naturally speaking. So all I'm saying is that we live in an artificial mental universe that is not identical with the physical universe or even the spiritual universes. Our concept of fairness, our concept of morality has no correlate, or no counterpart in the spiritual universe, nor in the physical universe. Nature is just what it is. It's just a process where different genetic copies are tried out, and if one survives better than the other, it keeps thriving and is able to replicate itself, right? And to a similar extent, or I mean, in a very similar manner, the same happens in the spiritual worlds, where we got egregores, which are essentially thought forms. All religions are egregores, right? And they, just like biological life, want to survive. When we put out a thought, it exists on the mental plane. And everything that exists has a tendency to maintain itself in some way or another, right? So I call them mind viruses, because that's really how they act. They penetrate and infiltrate the energy field of people that are strong enough to resist them, and feed off of their emotional investment in it. You see, so we live in a mental universe, pretending or thinking that it is the physical universe, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're plugged into a world of ideas, and based on that, we filter what's going on in reality. However, all evidence, all real physical evidence, points to the fact that what we believe in is an illusion. Fairness is, like I said, it's not a concept that exists in nature, it's an invention. Karma, as most people would understand, it also doesn't exist. Karma is obviously has its roots in Buddhism. Some say Hinduism. It's hard to decide where it comes from. I would say probably from it's from India, but essentially it just means that it's a feedback mechanism. The energy, the frequency that you put out is going to return back to you in some way or another. That's literally all that it means. So we have this feedback mechanism that we interact with on a constant basis. However, the mind is being hijacked by certain ideas. Now, if you're really good at this, such as religious figures and philosophers, you can use that to your advantage. And all religions always have been political tools, right? The point is, there is competition, and competition is really the mechanism that the universe uses. Okay, so let's take the example of a biological organism. We have two different organisms, right? A blue fish and a green fish. Nature has an algorithm where it tries out different types, right? So blue fish, green fish. Blue fish and green fish are exposed to the same environment, and one of them is going to thrive and survive better. Boom. Nature then has set these mechanisms in place that blue fish is now gonna replicate more, and therefore in the next generation they're going to be more blue fish, right? So this is the algorithm. That's really how it works, and it constantly strives to improve itself through a mechanism like that. So the individual is not really that important. There's a process going on that is much bigger. consciousness that has been incarnated, right? And incarnated, the etymology of incarnation is in the flesh, incarnate. That's Latin for in the flesh. So our consciousness, which is not identical with the body, it's also not the mind. It is understanding, pure consciousness, basically. That's what it is. And it takes on a physical form, which in this case is a humanoid body, right? It's a body that I would say 80-90% is an animal. And then we have some, or even more than that. And then we have some ability to reason and think. And this part tries to keep our instincts in check. But at the end of the day, we're just experiencing this body that is interacting with an energetic universe. And we're constantly experiencing these feedback loops. The problem is that the feedback loops that we experience are not instantaneous. And if we would draw a curve of things happening and the feedback loop arriving, there would actually it would become really confusing. Because if we, let me ask you a question. What did you have for dinner last night?
A wrap at work.
Okay. What did you have for dinner August 24th, 2002?
I don't know.
No chance, right? Yeah.
No.
So the closer the event, the better we remember it, right? However, the feedback of the energy that we put out doesn't work that way. It's essentially, if we want to create something, we have to consistently put energy into it, and it works like a hockey stick. So in the beginning, we don't see the feedback mechanism. So we put it in. You want to build your brand, or you want to build your podcast, right? So what you're going to see is not much. You put out energy, you put out energy, you put out energy. There's not going to be much, maybe incremental changes, but you're not going to see that much. And maybe in a year, boom, you're going to see an uptick, exponential growth. So the problem is you're not going to. We experience that constantly in our lives. Okay, so the smoker, he smokes cigarettes for 20 years, right? Incremental energy into the direction of cancer. Now, boom, after 20 years, all of it hits him at once, right? Now, he doesn't remember all those cigarettes he smokes. He's like confused, right? Maybe the smoker might even be aware of it, but most people literally are not aware of what's going on in their lives. They're constantly like, what the fuck? Why is that happening now? Why is this happening? They're literally walking through the world clueless, you know? And that's the point. You know, there's a disconnect between what we do, the energy that we put out, and when it hits us back. And that is one of the main problems here. And the same applies to magic and the occult. But generally speaking, fairness, I think this mechanism is the closest thing to fairness, because you will reap the rewards of the energy that you put out. That's for sure. Okay. But fairness in the sense of everybody being equal is obviously bullshit. A 3-year-old could tell you that not everybody's equal. We should all be not even be treated equal, but we should all have the same opportunities. But obviously the results are going to differ, right? So this fairness, you know, doesn't really make sense. I don't even think that's the point. Fairness is an idea invented to appease people, right? Because the reality of the life is brutal, it's harsh, and you know, nothing's fair. Some people are, you know, stronger, some people are weaker, all of that. But in order to appease people and to keep them working in a system that benefits the 1%, you got to feed them an idea of fairness. You know, it's just like you get a slave and tell him that in you know, after he's dead, after he worked himself to death, he's gonna go to heaven, right? So you give him an idea that appeases him, and very similar things are going on today.
Yeah. Wow, so much to unpack there. When I was watching your video today, even with like fairness in terms of love magic, because earlier today I was like, that is something I would never do because it's not fair. And then I listened to what you said, and it was like, one of like my mottos in life is like, when I know better, I'll do better. I don't hold on to any beliefs that I've carried like from the day before. I'm willing to learn when something feels right to me. And you articulated it in a way where, you know, it kind of like took away that illusion of these concepts of like what we can do and what we can't do, breaking down like if you have a energetic advantage in life, how is that different than somebody who has a financial advantage, or somebody who's just naturally very beautiful and charismatic, a healthy body, different things. Like we all come in with different superpowers in a sense, or circumstances and things. And there's really no reason why we shouldn't use that other than these programmed beliefs that we've been handed down. And when you were able to like kind of cut through that today, I just felt myself like, I felt like I came out of another mental prison. And I was very thankful for your concepts today.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for saying that. Well, I think what we have to understand is that almost everything that is believed and understood by the masses is wrong, not because it's wrong, but because it's believed by the masses. Let me break that down. Like, what does that mean? We have everything in nature distributes according to a bell curve, right? And the top of the bell curve is where you don't want to be, because that's what everybody does. That's what everybody believes. And that's where the average is. So if you believe what most people believe in, you will get the results that most people believe. If you adhere to the same morals and standards that most people adhere to, you're going to get the same results. Now, I don't want to be, obviously, I mean, the average existence is not what I'm striving to realize, if that makes sense. Okay. So you got to pick your beliefs, and you got to pick them. You got to analyze them. You got to analyze exactly who fed you those beliefs. And then you got to clean house. Right. And then you pick what serves you. Beliefs are tools, because your emotions and your thoughts are tools. Why? Because they're tools in a sense where they affect the greater universe, the macrocosm. So the microcosm needs to be structured and organized in a way that it serves you. Any idea and any thought that weakens you in any way, shape, or form should be treated like an enemy inside of your own kingdom. This is the most private space that you have. You know, it's I consider the mind more private than the body. To be honest, it's well, maybe you get what I mean, but at least as private, okay? Because you know, it's a more important space to me personally. Not because I don't think the physical is important, absolutely, but I know the power of the mind, and I know to what extent you can be weakened if you allow weakness into your mind, or if you allow people to take advantage of you, because that's really what's going on, right? You only have two choices. Either you take charge of that and control it, or it's going to be used against you. Because, like I said earlier, there are thought forms out there. And look, this world that we live in is full of spirits, you know, in the lower realms. And what I mean by lower realms is essentially everything that is close to the physical is inhabited by spirits that are vibrating very, very slowly and lowly. And their entire point of existing is to feed off of negativity. Now, in order to feed off of negativity, they have to create and cause negative events. They have to mess with people's minds in order to generate that type of energy so they can feast off of that. So your mind needs to be a fortress. Your beliefs need to be supporting. And yeah, so the point is, there's nothing wrong with let's say having a positive outlook on life. You absolutely should have that, absolutely. And it's absolutely fine to be altruistic, absolutely. However, we got to put things into context. When we look at the pure Homo sapiens procreation stuff, if you look, I'm reading a book here. It's evolutionary psychology here. Okay, you know what word never shows up in that book? Altruism. Okay, so what do I mean by that? This is obviously a materialist. I'm not a materialist myself, right? But the book was written by a materialist. Now, if you look at the world through a materialist view, then a lot of moral understandings don't make sense. So in that context, what you said, if you just want a person to like desire you sexually and physically, magic is absolutely the way to go. Not a problem. Now you're not going to find love through a love spell. right? Even though it's called a love spell, but love is something voluntarily given. You cannot force somebody to love you. You can force them to lust over you. You can force them to think about you, but you're never going to get love, because love is you can't force love. It cannot be given. It can only be given voluntarily. So that also needs to be understood. And you can only be loved if you deserve it, if that makes sense. Okay. Now that once again goes against the belief of a lot of people who believe that they should be loved just for existing. I'm breathing just like 8 billion other people, so I deserve love. The only person that's really going to love you unconditionally is your mother, really. And why? Because that also serves a biological purpose, obviously, right? But the point is, inflow equals outflow. I have no children right now at this point in my life, at 38. I want to have children in the future, but I didn't have them intentionally. Why? Because I understand that there's a big responsibility that comes with that. So whatever I want, I have to be able to match it with the energy that I put out. Otherwise, I'm violating the laws of the universe, and I'm going to pay for it, or the children are going to pay for it, which I would not want them to have to do. And that's how I see everything else in my life. If I want something, I have to deserve it. Now, even in a love spell, I have to deserve the result of the love spell by putting up the energy in the ritual, if that makes sense. Okay. But like I said, love is not something that can be forced, that can be generated. And it's you know, and it's kind of like a contradiction, right? The whole point of wanting love is because it is voluntarily given, right? As soon as you could force somebody to love you, it loses all value, you know? And love is absolutely the most powerful force in the universe. And I think this is the only one that you can't buy, force, or generate. It's something that is given voluntarily. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I resonate with that completely. And then I'm wondering too, like, okay, so say for like finances, bringing it in, would you like, one of the things that I struggled with, and I've put in a lot of work lately, is like, you know, I used to like put in energy for like spells for money. And then I would like sit on the couch in my pajamas eating potato chips, being like, where is it? I found for myself, like, the most power came when I put in the energy in the physical, like studying finance, learning how to budget, getting into like different like monetary systems. I actually took a break from spirituality just to go and work like in the real world, just to ground myself more, to like really anchor in that lesson. And when I finally put that energy in away from magical thinking, that's when results started pouring in and the spirits took me seriously. And I found that to be like a sweet spot. I wasn't sure if you had any like thing to add when it comes to like manifesting money, because it's such a buzzing topic for people.
Yeah, sure. That's what you just described is what's called footwork in magic. It's essentially the energy. Let me try to describe it like this. So what we're doing is when we work magic, we're putting out energy, we're putting out ideas. Okay. So what we're creating is a thought form, which is essentially a blueprint. And that blueprint needs to be filled with a critical mass of energy so that it can manifest and condense, right? The only difference between the idea of a Red Bull can and the physical Red Bull can is the amount of energy in the physical one, because energy is just condensed energy. Matter is just condensed energy, right? So what we have to do is we have to put enough energy into the idea. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible to manifest things without footwork. However, you make it much harder for it to appear, because the energy that you put out is going to use natural means to appear in your life, right? So the minimum you should do if you want to manifest things is you should talk to more people, because the universe is going to use other people to bring you the result of what it is that you wanted. Okay. So I guess, yeah, whatever you do to make the manifestation easier is definitely going to help the manifestation of the ritual. Now, I got to say though, that when it comes to evocation, done correctly, you can literally manifest amounts of money into your account. I've done it many, many times without literally no physical effort, you know. So it is possible. However, you can make it easier for on yourself if you like you said, work on it. Plus, I mean, my goal of things, or I think the goal of anyone should be the mastery over something, not in order, like at the end of the day, we want to transcend things. The only way to transcend something is when you literally go beyond it. You can only control a game that you're bigger, if you're bigger than the game, right? And the real motivation behind money, I believe, for most people is freedom. It's not that they want money. What they want is to be free of the worry of money or about money. So in order to do that, you have to understand enough about the topic to be really free about it, because whatever you understand enough about is no longer going to affect you negatively in any way, shape, or form. You gain control over it. You gain the ability to generate it and create it on demand. And that's really what we're after. We're not after billions of dollars and then having our lives stripped away from us because we're constantly having to run from meeting to meeting in order to manage that money, right? What we're really after is freedom, and then maybe use it to have impact with it. And that's really what it is about. So I think studying it and understanding the topic is definitely important too. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm quite new when it comes to like actually doing spells for myself. But I had something I was gonna say and it just like jumped out of my mind. I hate when that happens. Give me 1 second. What was I gonna say? It's embarrassing. Robin moment.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so embarrassed. 50 Shades of Red. Okay.
I've never forgotten anything my entire life, just so you know.
Oh, not me. A little bit about me. I had a concussion a few years ago. My whole spiritual journey began from a car accident that I was T-boned. I was very physically disabled, lost my memory for like a year. Yeah, I was like I had a memory, but I couldn't retain things. I couldn't read anything and keep it. But that's when like the precognitive dreams started nightly and spirits started visiting me. And it was like my abilities it was like on and happened all at once. So I'm like healing my physical body. I'm just like going through a complete death of my old life. And at the same time, it's just the supernatural was like the Kool-Aid man from Family Guy just like broke down the wall and it's like, I'm here.
That's an amazing, amazing story. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I do have these like once in a while have a moment where I just like I'll blank and I'm like, oh, now it happened. So that's definitely what just happened there. So I give myself a little grace when I do funny things. I know we were talking about spells and money, manifestation, putting in that energy, the work that you put into a ritual. And as I was saying, it's not something I have done a lot. The way that I've manifested powerfully is so I don't believe in like the God from the Bible. I just pray to my creator because I believe that just goes straight to whatever created me. And that's been potent for me. And I just speak what I want. I speak what I need. And like insane things have like happened in my life from that. And it's become very like the pattern, like you're talking about, like being able to read the day, read the dreams, read the omens, the signs, understanding like that's not a coincidence. That person's, speaking to me, or I bumped into this person, I picked up this book. Like I've been so like self-sourced on this journey. And then it was almost like the spirits would just come to me. And that's been a really interesting way because I did spend time studying the occult, but what I found happened to me was like I'd have the experience and then I needed to go and find out what the fuck happened to me and what was going on. And then I would study. And that's kind of how it's come. And it's like just finding myself in situations that I've had to like take a moment away from it and be like, what does this mean? I had an interesting dream. It was like 2 months ago, and it was like the angel of death came to me. It was during a nap, which was like quite interesting. And I just remember him telling me to imagine everybody in my life had died, everybody I loved, everybody I cared about, just imagining that like separation, disconnecting myself from it. And it was just so wild because like it was emotional. I think the whole dream took like 2 minutes, but I felt like I was there for a while. It was very lucid. And then we're on a, like, I'm looking at this rock face and I can see him and his shadow, and it's the Grim Reaper. And I look at mine, it's my shadow, but it transforms like into the Grim Reaper. So like my shadow mirrors his, and I'm like, what does this mean? And I look at him and he transforms into this like ball of light. And it was like the most transcendental experience. I don't even know how to describe it. And I'm suddenly just like witnessing it, like zooms out and I see like the universe and birth and death, and like it was like ecstasy. And then I wake up and I'm like, what was that? And it sends me on an adventure to like be like, wow, this is part of like my life path manifesting before me. And like seeking out how to like integrate that in. And that's when I have these experiences, it's hard for me to manifest a desired outcome, because I almost sometimes feel like I don't know what is best for me if I just like leave it in surrender. And I'm like, what is coming up next? What do I need to know? Like this week I asked for inspiration for my podcast, and boom, you came in just like out of nowhere today, and we're now recording. And it's like, it's kind of this like chaotic way to manifest. I'm a Pisces, so like I definitely I thrive in the flow, but it's been interesting to like understand the need to also have the structure of a spell or a ritual to be like okay with being like, I also desire this, and it is okay to bring that in. It's okay to utilize my abilities in that way, because it's something I've been timid about doing, although when I've manifested, I've had like beautiful results. But sometimes I have that like opinion. I'm like, I don't know if I know what's best, because when I leave it like a blank slate, I get surprised by like the most amazing things. And I found that dance between surrender and then also dominating your reality to be one. It's balance, but it's hard to strike that when you're working with energies and figuring out like what suits me best, what ritual or magic is best for my life path, because there's so much out there. There's so many teachers to learn from. I think when I think about magic, I think the most profound thing for me has been like perspective, like what you do, and having these talks and taking these concepts, and like it's like the Wizard of Oz, right? when they see who's behind the curtain, but that's like with ideas and beliefs we've had. Once it's like you have that like cathartic feeling and you understand something, your whole energy changes, and then you're a match for different things. And it's like that internal manifestation, that freedom within, that alchemy, where you can feel in your soul like, I'm so fucking free now from going through this process of stripping myself down, stripping down even everything I thought I wanted. Because what I think I want for my life changes so much month by month, the more I just allow myself to go through that process. Although very painful and scary at times, it has been the most rewarding thing. And I didn't know if you could relate at all, because you have a very different style, but it's something that I've been gravitating more towards. But I've been doing so by like trying to understand it first and hear like how that would be implemented, because I know you could do a spell to bring in money and have like, even working with spirits, having them work on your behalf. But how do you know what to do and what's right for you? And even if you're capable.
This is a multifaceted answer I'm gonna have to give you on that topic, but I'll start with this. Any type of spirituality and any type of spiritual system, and I consider there's a difference between ritual magic and spirituality, and they're not one of the same things. However, I think sooner or later anyone who touches magic, even just for spells, becomes spiritual, because it's hard to stay a materialist or remain a materialist if you see the results of your spiritual work, right? So, or your magical work in this case. So the point is any type of spiritual training, any type of spiritual activity only makes sense in the context of preparing you for what's coming after your death, because this life is short, and so far nobody has managed to not die. So I think it's safe to assume that we're all going to die. So in this context, real spirituality is getting to know the states of consciousness that are going to happen after the physical body has died, experiencing them consciously, and then once the physical body has died, there are multiple different paths that you could take, but being prepared for that and then having a choice of what to do. Now, there are multiple different paths. The most common path is, I mean, in a Kabbalistic context, on the Tree of Life, I don't want to go into too many details here, but there are three different paths essentially, right? In a Kabbalistic context, there's this the path of air, which is most commonly taken by people. And by the way, which path you take is solely dependent on your development before you die. So the first path that people take after death is kind of like this experience of where the different elements leave the physical body. Okay, so first it's the air element that leaves the body, so the breathing stops. Then it's the water element. Then it's the fire element, the temperature drops, and then eventually the earth element, which gives the body solidity, and it dissolves. Right now, during that process, at the end of it, or as it's happening, the remainder of the energy of the person, the remainder of the etheric body remains in the heart center, right, for another 3 days, and then there's a disconnection, and the person in the process of dying, or their consciousness as they're dying, experiences this as this tunnel of bluish gray light. I'm sure you heard many people talk about that stuff, right? It's like, I see the tunnel, somebody was calling me to the light. That's what they're all experiencing, right? Now they're in this tunnel that they're being pulled into. There are different experiences, but mainly they're going to experience the different reflections of their own consciousness. When a person has no mental training as they're alive, they have zero control of what is being projected out of their consciousness. And most people die without having any control over their consciousness, any real consciousness. So they're going to, in this tunnel and in this transition, they're going to experience the projections, their own fears, their own expectations and all that stuff, right? Then they're going to end up in some form of an afterlife that reflects their deep held beliefs, so heaven is real in that sense, hell is real. However, it's a temporary experience before they reincarnate. So the physical time frame of how long they stay in the afterlife is determined by how long the body still exists. Basically, if the longest time to preserve it would be something like mummification. And the ancient Egyptians intentionally mummified the body so that they wouldn't have to reincarnate and they could stay indefinitely in their specific afterlife. The Hindus, obviously, they want to come back right away, so they burn the bodies, right? And somewhere in between, our culture, we dig the bodies, and it takes around like 30 to 45 days, and then you will see a reincarnation of the soul. So they're very much connected. Now, those 30 to 45 days, if it's happening in the spiritual, which is outside of space and time, could literally seem like an eternity. Yeah. But the eternal part of the person will reincarnate into a new body based on what is necessary to balance out the soul and to give it the experience that is necessary right now. It's not consciously chosen at that point. However, one constant is that as the soul comes into more and more experiences and into more and more incarnations in different forms, it definitely grows in its understanding of consciousness, and eventually everybody hits a higher consciousness, a higher level of awareness, right? Those are the people that are more like spiritually inclined, right? And then there's a second path, which is rather similar to the first one, right? But the third one, the third path that is taken by most people who have had solid spiritual training as they were still alive, that leads to the ability to consciously choose your next incarnation and reincarnate with full memory, or you dissolve into different forms of existence. So if you don't want to return here, you have the ability or the opportunity to exist in different realms that are completely alien to what we're experiencing here, right? So in that context, the growth process leads you at one point to the understanding, and I think that's the same thing. I don't think I'm reaching here, because I think I've heard this from so many different people that I consider this like a common thing, where the person on their spiritual path begins to see their emotions completely as a tool. So leading your or using your desire, your desire in the moment as a navigation system is detrimental. Why? Because these emotions and desires are, to a large extent, survival mechanisms that pull you through pleasure, pain, and all of that stuff. And this is all part of the physical. You know, it's an extension of the survival mechanism of the physical body, which is very different from the source or the soul. You know, so at one point the initiate, or even the adept, you know, which is probably a little higher, but the initiate must learn to completely change their emotions at will. This is part of magical training. You also have to be able to control your thoughts. It doesn't mean that you control your thoughts 24/7, but it means that if you want, you got to be able to redirect your mind and its activity. And now, if your mind, your emotions, and your experience of this world can be changed at will, now what are you then? Right? So you're not the thoughts, you're not the emotion, you're not the body. So what are you, right? So in the process of learning how to control all of those things, how to control the system, you become aware of a part of yourself that is eternal and that is just there. It's always a constant that is just experiencing through those different mechanisms, the emotions, the thoughts, and all that stuff, right? And this is the part that we need to identify with. As the adept becomes initiated into more and more levels, they no longer identify with the body. They no longer identify with the emotions nor the thoughts. They identify with that part which is constant, eternal, and that's the part which will move on into a new incarnation, you know. Now, from that perspective also, most limitations that exist are no longer there. So you can use this part to control things around you. You can use that part to remote view. You can use that part to enter different bodies. You can use that part to travel along different timelines. You can use that part to do interdimensional travel, all of that stuff. You can simultaneously exist in multiple reality frames. You can simultaneously, as we're having a conversation here, you could be on the astral and do a ritual there, you know. Like, I would say any, maybe not any, but me personally, half of my day is not even spent here. It's spent on the other side, you know. And is it wasted time? Definitely not, because from there, I'm influencing things that are here. This is the dream. The physical world is the dream. This other world is real, or more real. I would even say the more subtle it gets and the more it is removed from the physical, the more it is actual reality. So the physical world is literally just a dream play now that can be programmed on the other side. So, yeah. So my thoughts on that topic is not necessarily answer, because you didn't really ask a question that directly, right? But you made a point here. In my opinion, the emotions are really, really bad navigation systems. We also have to make the distinction between intuition and emotions, because they're not the same thing. Emotions are things that ebb and flow and are, how do I put it? They're literally just an extension of our survival mechanism. Okay, let's imagine you fall in love with a man, okay, with a guy. Your emotions will tell you it's a mechanism that tells you that this guy has good genetic material, and nature is telling you through those emotions, mate with that guy. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that doesn't sound very romantic, but that's at the bottom. That's what's going on, right? So your intuition is something completely different. Your intuition is something that is an instantaneous knowingness without any linear, like coming up with a solution. You just know, and that's very different from emotions, because it feels very different. It's just a knowingness, really. It's just like, it's almost as if you're observing that effect that it is having on you. Whereas emotions make you like you're really engaged in those emotions, you know, and that's the difference. And very few people, coming back to the majority of people on this path, or that consider themselves on this path, very few people work with their mind so much that they actually can make those distinctions, because it takes a lot of introspection, it takes a lot of observation, it takes a lot of awareness to discern between those things, so most people never even do that, which, I don't know how to put it, but we live in the physical world here. We live in Malkuth, and Malkuth is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is the initiator, but also he's like he's hard but fair. He's mean but fair. So he requires us to do certain things, but if we do the work, we can reap the benefits and rewards.
Yeah, and that almost kind of segues into psychic ability as well, because it's so tied into like emotion, your intuition, how you feel, inner knowings, even something like psychic imagery, how like clairvoyant images, you can haunt yourself, if you're not able to distinguish like what is actual, your evidential tangible information, and then what you may want it to be, or what's passing through your mind, influence from spirits as well. When you were mentioning, like almost like these like parasitic entities that are just like everywhere in society, just like people are food, they're feeding off of them. Being able to understand when you're being influenced, is it your emotion? Like it goes so deep, there's so much, like it seems simple, but it's so it's intense. When you're able to like sift through the thoughts, like when I first had an intrusive experience with an entity, which it felt like a huge initiation to me, it was like really imposing on my thoughts and my imagery, and I'd have very like stark or violent images like pop into my mind, or like a thought that would come in, and I would like argue with it. And at first, like I'm like, oh wow, I think I'm going crazy. But then I was able to understand, like I was dabbling in the occult and I was easy prey at the time. But it really opened my eyes up to so much, especially people who don't realize how sensitive they are in their bodies. They don't understand how their abilities are working. My body, like if I chose to in a reading, like, being able to mirror somebody's body, getting a deeper understanding. I try not to do it just because I don't want their energetic residue in my body. That's like, it's really crappy boundaries there, but that's how I operated my whole life, because I didn't know, being able to mirror somebody's body. Well, you walk through a bar, like all of
You're also
that, like
Pisces, huh?
yeah, very Pisces. So like taking on that like as a sponge, wondering, why I felt so chaotic in my mind for so long, why I felt like stifled and in pain in my body. Now, like being able to do like banishing rituals for myself, it actually like grounded my thoughts so that I can like focus in a day. My body's getting healthier. I'm able to create more. Like I'm much more powerful in manifesting and in my practices, just by being aware of like what's going on in my thoughts, what's happening in my body. And then I just think of like all of these people. I'm like, am I talking to you? Am I talking to the entity? Like you really start wondering, and clairvoyantly just seeing, what is around some people, what some people, think they're interacting with. Like I have no problem with like whatever people want to do when it comes to entities, but they should at least know what they're doing. Because I know like the new age is strife with people who think they're like channeling these like benevolent beings, but it's just like an entity that's fucking with them and like having a heyday over
Yeah.
the little show they're getting these people to put on for them. Like it's interesting. It's very interesting, because you walk through life with that lens, and it becomes isolating but empowering, because you're able to start seeing a little deeper in the dream, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't actually think a person can act without being influenced by anything, because it's either an entity that is working through you, some egregore in some form of another, or it is your intentional influence that you pick, that you choose. All right. So if I begin my day with a specific intention, that is a thought form, and that thought form, as I'm putting energy into it, is going to begin to influence the way I look at the world, and it's going to influence my emotions. And it's just a conscious choice of what I allow this body and this mind to be influenced by. Most people don't do that. They usually have habitual parasites, if that makes sense, and they're influenced by those. So let's say somebody's an alcoholic, he's going to be vampirized by the by the egregore or the spirit of alcohol, and with that he's been more vulnerable, and then other entities are going to work through that person, right? Now, I don't, like I said, we're not at the top of the food chain, if that makes sense. I know we think we're at the top of this food chain in terms of animals. However, spiritually, we're food, for sure. Now, most of us, I'm not, but as far as how can you say that, Frank? And what evidence do you have? I know, my friend, I know. So the point is, this world is really a battlefield for different entities, and they strive to expand their food source. That's really what people's emotions are, for the most part, right? And the whole game that we're playing here is developing enough resistance and a strong enough cohesion in our own consciousness so that it can resist all those influences, and we gain control over ourselves. And as this weight training, the spiritual weight training that we go through here in the physical world, allows us then to prepare for the chaos that happens after death. Like, it's not going to be easier when the physical body has died and we don't even have that physical perception as a focal point anymore. And that's why we need to learn to control the mind, because that gives us the equanimity, equilibrium, whatever you want to call that, that would allow us to thrive after we die.
Yeah. What would a constructive, like, meditative practice look like to you for somebody, say, that's like starting out?
Okay, constructive is not the same thing as being comfortable, because that's what most people would like. People just look for shortcuts with everything. Okay, I gotta put this out there first. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be tough.
Okay, so you just asked me about a productive meditation or a constructive meditation, right? How to meditate best. What would be a good way to start your meditative practice? And the first thing that I have to say is constructive does not mean easy. All right. The problem is that most people just want shortcuts. You're not gonna be able to use shortcuts. You can also not outsource your spiritual development. It does not fucking matter whose book you read, whose course you buy. Now, obviously, you're going to learn something from that, but the practice is what gives you that knowledge. So you cannot outsource your spiritual growth, and you can also not just hear what somebody else says and regurgitate that. This is not school. All right. So you got to make your own experiences. And that's the only thing that's really going to give you any benefits. So constructive meditation means that you sit down and go through the discomfort, because what's really happening is you are, for the first time, experiencing yourself fully. I know that what I'm saying is, throughout the day, as much as people think that they're conscious, they're not conscious. What they're doing is they're living in different memories, they're living in different future projections, and they're living in mental scenarios, but they're never fully here. There will be moments there, such as right after an orgasm or something like that, where the mind is empty and the person really can experience a moment of peace or whatever, right? But throughout the day, that's not common. So in meditation, you're being confronted with yourself. And that's what makes it very uncomfortable, because your mind is, if it is a normal mind, untrained, it is a complete mess. It's a source of all of your problems, and it's a source of all of your suffering. So being confronted with that, you're dealing with a beast that is going to make it very, very uncomfortable for you. So be prepared for that. It's a daily battle with yourself. However, the battle gets easier. Now, will there be pleasant experiences? Absolutely, of course. However, what is often, and I'm like, I don't know why I do that, but I'm always kind of like the complete opposite of what people talk about. Because if most people, if you would ask most people about meditation, they would just tell you about how awesome it feels and how great it is, and it's so good. And that's true. That's part of it. You become more calm. You have moments of pure bliss and all that stuff. But even more so, before you clean something up, all the dirt has to come up first. So it's not comfortable at first, sitting there, having all this energy run through you, being thrown into these memories, and you have to viscerally experience them. But at the bottom of it all, you will find peace. So you're going to have to first go through the discomfort, and at the bottom of it, you will find true peace. And over time, as you stay in touch with this deeper level, this will be your new home. And this is actually the true home you're yearning for. There's no happiness in the world. I'm definitely not somebody who's against pleasure and all that stuff, but I'm also not a materialist. And you have to understand that there is no goal in the physical world. This world, you can use your senses to cover up this feeling of separation that we're all suffering from. In this world, we're lonely. What's funny? Every single person, if you would actually ask them about their experience of life, and if they're truthful, they would say, "No, I don't think anyone gives a shit about me." That's the human experience. That's the human condition. Might be true, might not be true, but that's the feeling that you have if you live in a physical body. That's the human condition. So, at the bottom of this, or as you go deeper into your own consciousness, you expand beyond this individuality, which is the source of the suffering, you see? And as you go beyond the source of the suffering, all there is your eternal self, which has no limitations. And this is the purest form of bliss that you can experience. Why? Because it's just being, and it's very pleasurable, it's very peaceful, blissful, and it will become your new home. So you're gonna always have this new experience and this new beingness in the background of your mind. And this will be your new home. And from there, most things, are more pleasurable, besides all the other benefits. I mean, it's proven, there are so many studies on that topic. You become more intelligent the more you meditate, because your brain gets more integrated. You become more emotionally capable to deal with stress and negativity. You become physically healthier, your body rejuvenates, you actually age slower. So all of those are benefits, but the main benefit is that you get in touch with a part of yourself that cannot be destroyed, and that becomes your new home. And from there, everything can be done, because your reality is, first of all, just an interpretation of what's going on. And by changing the interpretation, you can actually change what's going on externally. So, but in order to change the interpretation, you have to be able to take a step back. So meditation allows you to go outside of that and to press the reset button, and then to start anew. And that's the first part. Now let's go into the actual practice and how to do it. I would say Vedic meditation is the easiest way to get into it. Most people, I mean, it's being sold under the trademark of transcendental meditation for the most part, but it is actually Vedic meditation. And all you need is a mantra, and you think that mantra in your head. You don't need any tools. You don't have to sit down in the lotus position. All you got to do is basically keep your spine straight, and then you close your eyes and you think that mantra. You concentrate on the mantra. And we're talking about concentration in meditation is different from the concentration when you solve a math problem. It's more like it's an intention to think it. You don't even have to hear every single syllable of the mantra. You just think it. You have the intention to think it. Yeah? Boom, 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 shitting, 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 shitting. And as you do that, the mantra becomes a vessel. And it's a vessel that allows your mind to go where it's supposed to be. It's which is transcending the self. It allows you to transcend the ego and the individuality. And from there, the results are you think with a greater mind. You know, in Zen Buddhism, they the Japanese version, they speak of the greater mind and the smaller mind. Obviously, the smaller mind is the individual, and they're plugged into this greater mind. And through meditation, it allows you to dive deeper into this greater mind. And now you're thinking with the whole wisdom, or basically the wisdom of nature can communicate to you through your subconscious, through your body. The body is very important when it comes to spiritual practices. It is the instrument that the energy uses to speak to us. Yeah. And yeah. So and the frequency, I say a minimum of 20 minutes twice a day, I think should be the frequency.
Yeah. And there's really no reason we can't do that, especially with what we, do on social media. It's so easy to just go into the black hole of scrolling, taking that time to be accountable for the hours of your day and just committing to that practice. One thing that I personally struggled with, and I don't know if any of my listeners could relate, when I would sit down to meditate, my psychic abilities immediately, it's like wanting to go on a journey, wanting to just like go and like sift through all the cracks and crevices of my psyche and have these experiences, learning to like know when to shut that off, to just go into the nothingness of the mantra, I had found to be very challenging. And I found that to be where the most discomfort was for myself.
You know, when you use a mantra, the mind has a natural tendency to go where it feels the best, or where it feels most bliss. So the most bliss will be accomplished, or will be attained in the most transcendent state. So it's actually kind of natural. If the meditation is done correctly, the mantra will automatically take you deeper and deeper, because the mind naturally wants to go deeper. So it is kind of like a natural process, to be honest, And the problem is that adults, or as adults, the brain is very compartmentalized. As children, everything is very integrated. Do you have children?
I do.
Yeah. How old are they?
15 and 10.
15 and 10. Okay. No, okay. They're like, up until the age of 7, children are very, very integrated. You probably remember that vividly. Like, they can go into like a fantasy world like this, right?
Yeah.
And as adults, or I think after the age of 7, the brain starts compartmentalizing, and then becomes harder. But it's meditation, among other things, does that too. It reintegrates the brain, so we have an easier time accessing the world of fantasy, which is really the astral plane. All of these invisible friends, a lot of them are real. So.
Yeah, that was actually one of the biggest mind fucks for myself, not realizing I'd been clairvoyant my whole life, thinking, every time I'm talking to somebody, I'm always doing things in my mind. All these images were always swimming around, but it's like, oh, that's just my imagination, so I'll pass it off as nothing. And when I really was able to like unlock my psychic abilities was when I allowed myself to be like a child with finger paint again, and to just let the images flow and to not judge them or try to filter what I was seeing to make it make logical sense, but to just let it flow. And that's when I was able to develop. And I found that to be really interesting, because I always thought the things that we know in life are what we can memorize, that we're taught, that we get graded on, that we can memorize. But being able to tap into like the infinite realm of creativity, the astral realm, the fantasy, and take information that could be quite potent and evidential and very helpful in your life, and be able to tell that story through our unconscious imagery, that is such a superpower. And like one of my passions is like trying to help people unlock that within their own mind, because I think as humans we're all capable, but it's the thing we're most disconnected from purposely, because it makes us very powerful. It makes us you can become quite self-sourced, not to disconnect people from the power and the love of community, and having real connections in life and learning from teachers, mentors. It's very important as well. But when you're able to have that kind of book of wisdom within yourself, and to be able to rely on yourself, I think it's a really beautiful thing, even beyond the oohs and the ahs of psychic ability. I think everybody at the very least should just try to develop their inner knowing. Just that should be the number one, Claire, at least for myself. That was really helpful, because it took a while to be able to do that. It was almost like the spirits would give me signs and synchronicities from the universe. It would come in very evidential, not just like the microwave saying 111. It was very specific, something that really mattered to me, what stood out. That's how my signs came. And eventually, I had so many leading me, and then they pulled it all. And all I was left with was myself. And it's can you steer yourself? Do you know which direction you're going in without these? And that's when the clear knowing started coming in. And I started acting on that and navigating my life that way. But that was really interesting in terms of abilities as well, because, I had been so reliant on clairvoyance. But learning how to, shift it and move. And, one thing I'm still finessing, so I'm a humble student always, is what you said earlier, is the intuition and the emotion, which I know over time will develop more as I take this path more seriously and put in the discipline to, meditate more. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, just add in more of that. And I know that you also you teach psychic development, if I'm correct. I think you do.
Yep. Everything connected to magic.
Yeah, because psychic abilities are so important if you're working with spirits. Being able to know what's in the room, what you're connecting with, being able to have that dialogue and know what to expect, what to give. I think it would be kind of crazy to try to go into ritual with a spirit, but to not have any awareness whatsoever of what you've just called in or what you're working with. For me, I didn't even realize the power of invocation until the clairaudience developed for myself. And when I'm working with a spirit, my ears will start popping. It's the temperature in the room changes, and it's very tangible. It's even it's been so, it's such a beautiful feeling. I love it so much. I could be when I'm ready to connect, even just out on a beach walking, I can feel it. It'll the presence is just so palpable and strong. But it's very bewildering once you start learning the energy signatures, thinking of going back to the time when you were numb to it, and how important it is to be open to developing. And I also understand that some people come in with more heightened abilities, probably training from past lives, things like that. But I'm going on a tangent there. I love going on to tell all my stories, but yeah, in psychic abilities and how it shows up for people, knowing everybody's so different, but on the path of the mystic, it's so important to get acquainted just with your body and how your information's coming in. It's not even that supernatural. It's supernatural for humans to do that. They just don't know.
Yeah, even animals do that. I don't think psychic abilities, well, the perception, or let me rephrase that. There are two parts to the psychic stuff. There's a receptive part, and there's also a projection part. The receptive part is quite easily accessible, and it is also something that is not unique to humans, actually. It's normal that when I do a ritual in nature, that all of a sudden animals start running as soon as the demon begins to manifest, and I think it's the psychic abilities. Like I said, it's part of this energetic Wi-Fi that we're all plugged into. It's Earth itself or the universe itself is one consciousness, and we're just plugged into it. And the body and like the mechanisms allow us to access that information, but that's not unique to us, right? A cat has that too. A dog has that too. I don't know if you ever let a pet go into the room after you did a ritual there. They will definitely respond to the energy. So the projection part though is a little bit harder to do, because that requires a control over the system that we call the body, emotions, and all that stuff. So that's where yoga comes in handy. And you said something about psychic abilities and working with spirits. I agree to an extent with what you said. However, it also depends on the ritual setup. If you were to use, let's say, a traditional goetic evocation, where you call a demon, and completely stayed in line with the instructions, you don't even need to be psychic. The demon's going to show up. You have signs of letting him know, or letting him tell you that he's there. I mean, I've been actually just teaching that in my order. I have an order where I was going through that method, and there's a part of the ritual where you ask the demon to confirm that he's in the room, and he's literally going to use physical stuff to show that he's there. You know, people have crazy experiences with you know, things moving around or sounds and stuff like that. And then also there's a ligatio, which is also part of the ritual, which means like you bind the spirit and you basically bind it to your will, or you basically force it contractually that the demon does what it is that you want. And then for that also there are certain things that you do to force the spirit to show itself to you physically. Not necessarily that it manifests physically, because that takes an enormous amount of energy, but it slams the door, or it makes the light go in and out, or you know, multiple different things. The other day he had whatever, I mean, you know, moving the paper around or something like that. So there are definitely ways of working with spirits without being psychic, but I agree with you, it's definitely better if you are, or if you have trained yourself to an extent.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, when did you first start working with demons? This has been like a big topic of interest for me. I'm very new at all of this, so it's been something that I'm studying. I'm learning about it. I'm being open to the idea of it, because for a long time for myself, like I was very stuck in that polarity of this is good and this is bad. So one thing that's really helped me, just like with my own, say, like shadow work, and really kind of getting into like my more Scorpio aspects. I have my dark moon in, or is it the Lilith in Scorpio? Like it's like my love for like the taboo, the occult, death, like anything that's kind of on the fringes of society. Usually when somebody's like, don't
Sorry.
do, oh, my Venus.
Where's your Venus? Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I don't know.
Okay.
I've picked my favorite ones. The one that I really have been working for this year has been the Lilith in Scorpio. But when somebody is like, don't do that, then I have this like curiosity, this magnetism towards it. And I was like, I just need to figure out for myself what this means or what this is. And the more that I've done that, the more I've realized, like, I'm like, everything I thought was a lie. All of this like kind of like inversion started when through like prayer and just a manifestation, I was looking for a place, and I ended up the miracle house was 666 for me. And I was like, you know, humming and hawing about taking it, but that was like my first dose of like getting over superstition. And now it's my favorite number. I love it so much. It was such a powerful realization for me, because I had kind of been polarized about like, that's black magic and that's white magic. Like I was stuck in that for a bit. But when it came to demonology and starting to learn about Dikoesha and Solomonic magic, I'm not sure where I heard it, and I'm still new at studying this, so I may butcher some things, but understanding like the 72 angels, it's like a polarity of each other, like the angel and the demon. I don't know if that resonates with you. But when I heard that, I kind of felt that about humans as well. And I'm like, it's kind of almost like this representation of what we're capable of, because when you reference like, you know, the primal instincts in humans, we're like one natural disaster away from like, what's that movie, The Purge? You know, like if humans just like let their natural instincts out on each other, we would be quite humbled to find that we're not so righteous. You know, like what we'd be willing to do to survive. People just kind of like want to hide from that possibility. It's just having that monster within, but knowing how to, you know, live like life balanced, having your hand in both the dark and the light, working with source. I heard you say that about like what a sorcerer really means, like it's like working with source. And it kind of just took away that the labels and brought open, you know, brought so much more into like possibility. And I've just been like so curious about it. So I don't have any personal experience other than, you know, reading and study. I'm a bit of an armchair occultist when it comes to demonology, but I'm young, and because I have put my hand on the burner so many times, and I would resonate more with being like a chaos magician. I just want to like get into everything and play and experiment. I've learned to exercise a little more discernment and to have that respect for these spirits, so that I don't go in a fool, because you can. And I know I've you know, been on the sidelines really like looking for, you know, people's experiences working with demons, and, you know, motives and why and where, say, their emotional maturity may lay when they go and ask for certain things to be done. It's like, have they examined if this is what they want? You know, I guess you can also have the be careful what you wish for, in a sense, because people, unless they've really broken down what they think it is they want, like you said, people think they want money, but they want freedom. So I found that to be interesting. And that's also, you know, that Virgo aspect in me. Like I want to like kind of structure it out and make sure it's like, if I'm going to do this, I need to be like so sure. And it's got a line. So I usually wait for that, like feeling the go ahead. But yeah, I'm still sifting through it, but I find it to be very alluring.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's like, yeah, the forbidden is very I mean, here's how I see it. Okay, so we live in a world of duality. The psyche is also dual. They say that, how do I put it? You can only be a good person if you're capable of bad things, but you choose to do good instead, you know?
Yeah.
So, and we also see that the shadow needs to play, okay? So they say that in every pacifist, there's a hidden warlord or something like that. In every they say that I mean, this is like basic psychology, right? In every caring person, there's a hidden sadist, you know. In every sadist, there's a hidden you know, good Samaritan or whatever the fuck that's called, right? So the point is, the psyche has a shadow. Why is that? Because by being one thing, automatically the opposite is created, and that is definitely true in our own psyche as well. By doing a kind act, on the flip side, there's its shadow that is created. That's just the dual universe that we live in. And the way to deal with the shadow is really to just let it play once in a while. You know, it's basically it will seek expression in one
your
way or
volume
another.
just cut out.
Can you hear me? You can't hear me at all?
I can't hear you.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. I don't know. I'm not muted.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay.
You're back. Oh, it's
Okay.
I just had a little thing. It said my internet connection is unstable. It should be good. Sometimes this happens. It'll pass.
Okay. So, yeah, like I said, the shadow is something that is created just by existing. There's also, I mean, you can break it down into physics, right? Like, as we create order, meaning we gain understanding about something, automatically disorder called entropy is generated. Okay, the same applies in the mental universe. The more you know about something, the more questions show up, right? So we can't create order without destroying something at the same time. Destruction must precede creation. So opposites create each other, right? The universe doesn't exist in absolutes. It's always a gradual expression of something. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a gray zone. There's never like one side or the other. And the same exists in our psyche. So I think we all agree that it's good to be a good person and to create constructive things. However, the shadow will always express itself in one way or another. And if you don't allow it consciously, the expression of itself, it will come out in really, really unpleasant and negative ways, right? So this means that it is, first of all, it's bad to deny yourself those instincts, if that makes sense. But like the worst thing is if you completely like disassociate from it, right? Then you have a neurosis, then you have a psychopath, then you have a whatever. Then you have a guy that is like super submissive in the outside world, but at home he turns, or like secretly does some weird freak shit on the internet. I don't know, like all this crazy stuff, right? So what you need is you need a space in your life that allows you to play out that shadow, right? And that is usually because it is so visceral, that should be done in the bedroom, in my experience, because this is where it's most authentic, if that makes sense. Okay, so magically speaking, there's a lot of power there. Okay, so for instance, sex magic, for instance, is completely based on not just in a tantric sense using the energy, but there is massive energy in sex acts that are taboo, if that makes sense. Okay, so as a taboo is crossed, there's a massive amount of energy that's released, and at the same time, there's balance and harmony recreated. So all of these things, if we have to try to look at things objectively and not put a moral label on those things, because our morals, like we said in the beginning, are completely self-imposed. They don't exist in nature. It's just a conscious choice of what it is that you want to do. Now, the choice that is most, I mean, it is a choice. You have other choices too, but I believe, in my personal experience, the best choice that you can make is to put out energy that is constructive, because that's what you're also going to attract. But at the same time, you're going to generate the opposite. And you got to give that space to play. And that's the way you deal with it. And unless you give it space to play, it's going to show up in a negative way. You can see that with, for instance, there are certain spiritual practices where you have to completely deny carnal instincts, you know, and that leads to weird expressions of that same thing, you see. So yeah, it's all about understanding the process. I think that's the main thing, because most people don't understand what's going on there. And they're constantly fighting this inner demon that they don't even understand what it is, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's the number one thing. And demonic work or working with demons in the first instance has actually nothing to do with that, with what I just described. We can't blame Satan for our I mean, this is like, what I'm saying is like, it's not the devil that's tempting you to do these things. You see what I mean? It's you. It's the process that I just described. So we can't blame the demons for basically seducing us to do this and that and the other. The demons are, yes, it's true, they're destructive forces. However, I see it like King Solomon. You know, King Solomon is kind of like this mythical figure, and he's the one that supposedly captured those 72 evil spirits in the Goetia and then made them subservient to him. So at the end of the day, he used those spirits for constructive work. And that is really something that you should use as guidance in your own magical practice, but also on how to deal with those destructive impulses within your own psyche, because we all have those destructive psyche. There's nobody who's constantly super blissful and just nice and doesn't feel like slapping someone in the face once in a while. Okay, everybody has these instincts, everybody has these impulses and whatnot. So there's nothing wrong with that as long as you understand what it is and deal with it in the right way. So yeah, demonic work is work that needs to be balanced out with positive energy. That's why people that purely work with demonic energies and dedicate their life to that don't end up well. They develop some weird cancer or some weird type of this and that and the other. And I've seen it many, many times. They're not healthy people. The same with people that are always on the light.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not natural. You know, it's just not natural. Looking at nature and going into, like, to go full circle now into the beginning of this call, right? Where we're talking about evolutionary mechanisms, right? Every animal in some way or another needs self-protection mechanisms, if that makes sense. So you're actually not healthy if you're not capable of bad things. It's just you're not, like, what are you? Evolutionarily, you're a failure, you know? So you have to be able to do all of those things. You have to explore every aspect of your psyche. You got to be in touch with the inner predator. You got to be in touch with the destructive forces, but not to use them on some weak people or whatever. You use that in order to you know, create constructive things with it, you know. Example, whatever. In order to hunt food, you know, you have to be able to kill the animal, don't you? Right? So yeah. And if you suppress, well, whatever, okay, let me be careful about what I'm saying here. But I think you get the idea. You have to be able to get in, to be in touch with every aspect of your psyche, and then give it an expression in some way or another. That's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. So cool how you mentioned like fetishes, which kind of go into like the BDSM world. It's something that like I've wanted to kind of like branch into my brand in a sense, just because I found that to be one of the most like honest places like I've ever met people. Because it's like they can go and just like take off the mask and they can be like, this is what I want. And it could be like, you know, completely ridiculous in a regular society, but you go into, you know, that dark room. It's almost like taking that like dungeon from your psyche and bringing it into the physical. But at least people are genuine and honest, and they can get past the fact it's like, maybe I don't know why this is here, but I'm giving it a place to exist. And that just, yeah, like brings more harmony into your life. And it's so misunderstood. Like, I listened to the podcast of a dominatrix for a year so that I could just like feel better about my life and understand like it's okay to be different. It's okay to, you know, have these things you want to express, but finding a healthy way, because it's so destructive to have these feelings inside and it just eats you from the inside out. And I've talked to so many people who live double lives, and you know, on the outside, oh, maybe he's a millionaire and he's got this and this and this. But, you know, at nighttime, he's, you know, doing all this like crazy stuff and, you know, waking up in the morning to another life. And you watch people do this. And I've just seen it time and time again. And it's like, if you could just be honest about what you wanted, if you could just get past, you know, the judgments first that you cast upon yourself, and second, what other people think. I just, one of my passions is like helping people just be more comfortable about what it is that they want, what it is they're really thinking. I challenge myself when I say speak to my creator. I say everything I'm thinking, because I'm like, whatever, it's not like I can hide anything. You don't got one over on me, because I know what my mess is. Like, I like to just say it, and the more I do, it's just like the freer I become. And it's like I don't want to hold shame over those things, but so many people are bound by it. So it's interesting when you said that, because it was a conversation I wrote down that I did want to have here, because it's so common and prevalent, but people just don't want to talk about it. And that's fine. It's not for everybody, but I think it's been a huge healing tool. And I see so many people using it to work through their traumas, or at least to have a sense of relief. And, you know, we're primal beings, but yeah, when you let it sit and fester, that's when you've got your own demon to deal with. And I think it makes you more susceptible to other types of influences, because you're just, it's dishonest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it is impossible to say, I mean, by definition, it is impossible to say if one is completely integrated, if that makes sense. Because by definition, the things that are subconscious, the person is not aware of, right? But I believe one of the ways to use this constructively, because there's a massive amount of energy behind those things, right? There's a massive amount of, it's like a motor. And I believe at the core of it, there's a survival instinct that exists. I mean, we're looking at a battery needs two different polarities. Okay. So what we have in our psyche is this motor that allows us to move forward in the world to survive, but also spiritually to exert control, if that makes sense, right? Now, once again, some psychologists listening will probably be like, why is he all about control? Why is he talk about control all the time, right? Is there a shadow of is there a shadow of being dissolved or being controlled? Is that lying unexpressed in his subconscious? I don't believe so. I do believe that I know my subconscious quite well. And what I have learned is that the natural result of integrating the shadow with the identity leads to a natural impulse to conquer and to expand oneself. At least that applies to my own personal essence. We have different essences, people are different, but for me, the integration results in an expansion of energy. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that this energy doesn't necessarily only have to be expressed in hiding, if that makes sense, or like you make space for it on the weekend, on Saturday afternoon, you have 30 minutes where it could be this and that and the other. Now that's absolutely a way to do it. However, I think that's if anything, that's the beginning, because sooner or later, the life has to be integrated, the psyche has to be integrated, and that's also part of magic. Because if you need a special setting and special costumes and all that stuff to access this force, you still have a lot of work to do. It's all about integrating that. It's about becoming that. A magician and a witch, they merge with their power. They become one with it. It means that the truth has to be expressed on a daily basis. Okay. So in my case, I guess I'm dominant in the bedroom, but also dominant in life. There's no hidden submissive guy that likes to get beaten in the bedroom or something like that. I do that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is essentially there should be an integration. It could be something that helps a person to get in touch with that other part, but eventually it should be one. And that's also the reason why I always attract submissive girls. Like whenever a woman is into me, she is exactly because of that dominant energy that she feels. That's what she's into. And opposites attract, obviously, right? And she's also completely in harmony with that energy. So, and obviously that's opposites must attract each other. So I think integration should be the goal. It's not to just I don't think everybody should start like leading a double life. Essentially what I'm saying is probably not the best way to live your life.
Yeah, how to carry that energy into everyday living. I mean, that's one thing I've been striving to do. If you looked at me like, if you looked at me a couple years ago, I looked like so love and light, and always wearing, I'm wearing florals, but always wearing like the hippie clothes, no makeup. I was trying really hard to like experience that like lighter aspect of me, but it was when I really got cool with like all of those parts of me that I allowed it to express every day. So it's like bringing in that sexual energy and how I carry my presence and my brand, and being like, that's just what you're going to get. Like, if you come to me, we're going to talk about all the things. Really, I don't mind. Like, bring it all out in the open. I'm cool with it. So that way, that part of me gets to like live and breathe all the time, not just in in these sectioned off parts of my life. And I think that's been a huge part of healing. And also it's like we have such stigmas about what somebody who is able to like heal looks like, and how they carry themselves. And I had to like go through that kind of like death of my appearance. That's also why I destroyed my old brand and podcast, because I didn't want to be associated with something that didn't feel like authentic. So now I come up as like much darker, and I'll like say all the things and joke about the stuff, but at least people know what they're gonna get when they come to me. It feels like I don't know. It feels a lot
Yeah,
better.
yeah. And I believe I totally believe this the shadow was the driving force behind our actions anyways. Like we can be honest about it, or we cannot be honest about it. But at the end of the day, what runs the show is the subconscious energies anyways, right? So I'm always very, very suspect about people that don't cuss. I'm always suspect about people that are just like the epitome of Joe Schmo, you know, like clean cut, like everything perfect and all that stuff. That's, to me, is a red flag. That's a psychopath, I mean, for real. Because I mean, how, like, you know, like, I think you know what I'm saying. Like, what is this person hiding? You know, I mean, pedophiles always look like that, or you get what I mean? So,
Oh yeah.
that's
I like
dangerous.
to read people for that reason, because in my life, just being like, I'm more on the submissive side, but it became such a handicap in life because I let it like take down my defenses, or allowing somebody's, you know, words or charisma, appearance, you know, convince you that there's something they're not, when really it's like, you're not dominant, you're weak, you're pseudo dominant, you know. And you can get into very like dangerous situations. And one thing that I had to learn over time, that like my kindness, my niceness was weakness. And it was like, because I would hide what I was trying to say to keep, you know, to keep kind and wanting to like tend the situation. And then eventually I just like had to learn, like, I don't want to beat this aspect out of me, but I also understand that it's very mean when I'm nice, because I'm not being honest, you know. Learning to be like very straight up with people, like kind
Yeah,
but
that might actually
firm.
be, yeah, but that might be a Pisces characteristic. You
It
know,
is.
I've had a lot of experiences with Pisces, and you guys are just very, very, what's the word? Very empathetic. You just sponges of energy, and you just don't want to hurt the other person. I guess that's what's going on there. But which is understandable. But you're right. You have to find a balance there. Um, hey, I have the birth chart, or free birth chart page open here, and I would like to
Mhm.
read your birth chart. Could you give me your
Ooh, do
data?
it.
When you were born? Yeah.
Yeah,
When were
March
you born?
14th, 1990.
March 14th, 1990. 1990. All right. So, yeah, like you said, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Scorpio. Pluto's in Scorpio. That's a very important position here for magic. Your Mars is in Aquarius. Your first house. Your ascendant is in Virgo. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Virgo rising.
Okay. I'm looking at this right now. So good. Your Sun is in your seventh house. Where's your Moon? Your Moon is in the second house. Okay. Venus in the fifth. Mars in the fifth. Are they conjunct? Venus and Mars? They're conjunct. Give me seconds. Venus conjunct Mars. Okay. And I'm going to start with the positions that are usually associated with magic. Okay. So your Saturn is trine your ascendant, which gives your ascendant a little bit of a Capricorn quality. You're also another Earth sign, which is Virgo. So you come across as very grounded. People always kind of like probably perceive you as kind of competent, even if you're not. And you seem very well put together, and you were probably, what's the word? you seem very mature, even if you were when you were much younger. So like competent, capable people trusted you with worldly tasks, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
Saturn,
it
it
does.
also gives you a little bit of a serious energy, especially that Saturn. It makes you also a little bit, what's the word? On Saturn's in the fourth, but it's in conjunct your ascendant, which basically gives you a little bit of, okay, once again, that maturity is there, but also the energy of Saturn also makes a person, Saturn on the ascendant makes a person a little bit, what's the best way to describe that? Hyper aware of their own weaknesses, very self-conscious in social situations often. And also it takes them a while to warm up.
Yep.
But that's just because they don't want to make a mistake. And yeah, what else? Saturn on the ascendant. Sometimes a tendency to be lonely, not lonely essentially, but like enjoying their time by themselves, essentially, reflecting, seriousness. You're like, there's also the energy of seriousness that comes through. Good. Moon is in Scorpio. In which house? Moon is in. So your moon is your emotional life. Yeah. And the moon in Scorpio just means that you have a lot of Scorpio aspects to you. Scorpio is just very, very passionate. You have probably a lot of Scorpio aspects, like the sun sign. You're very Scorpionic, you're very loyal, but you also hate with a passion. You are, yeah, you're very, what's the word? Yeah, people probably hate you or love you for no, like, to you, it's not apparent why they do that. But what they're doing is they're projecting their own stuff on you, like the unconscious stuff. You're very much in tune with that. And Scorpio is the energy of darkness, which is hidden. So when people come in contact with your energy field, that stuff comes up. So it's not you, but you're bringing that up in the moment. We all been in a situation. For instance, I was at a barber today, and I was shaving had him shave my face, and I was going through something negative in my head. I was trying to solve a problem, and he asked me a question. I was kind of pissed. I'm like, why am I so rude? I was like, man, it has nothing to do with him. I'm just trying to solve that problem, right? So that's what you bring up in people. It's not against you, but they're confronted with their own darkness. Whatever. You wear something that reminds them of. Let's say you I don't know. You wear something that turns them on, but they don't want that because it reminds them of their secret life where they have dildos up their asses or something. So stuff like that. So
Nailed it.
That they're uncomfortable with. So that's essentially it. And also they have the feeling of being seen. It's kind of like a feeling of being naked in front of you. Mm-hmm. That's also where that comes from. Okay. So Pluto in the second house. Okay. All right. Pluto in the second house. Okay, the second house, or first of all, Pluto is the planet of power, of influence, and it's in your second house. The second house is the house of material resources in some way or another. So your lessons about power will be learned in relation to that aspect, material resources. So that's where you're going to find most limitations, but that's also where you're going to find the most growth potential. Uranus is in the fourth house. What house is your moon in? Moon is also in the second house. So your emotional stability or your emotional stability really relies on material. I'm not saying that you're like a materialist. All I'm saying is that for you to feel emotionally stable, you require above average material resources. That would be the interpretation here. Mars conjunct with Venus, usually like strong sex appeal and magnetic effect on the opposite sex. That is generally the interpretation of that. So you probably never had a problem with attracting, partners or whatever. Maybe the wrong ones, right? But it should never be a problem. Then you have Saturn in your 4th house with Uranus. Man, these are the craziest because they're complete opposite planets. So they're probably making you like, the 4th house is the house of family and tradition and all that stuff. So your desire, Uranus is the planet of freedom. So your desire to be free is in the 4th house, but also Saturn is in the 4th house, which is the planet of restriction. So I'm just going to take a shot into the dark here, okay? Which is the following thing. You probably left your home early in order to be free, but then ended up in a situation where that freedom was more or less taken from you again. So that will be it. So you probably, was your family home kind of like, were your parents a little bit strict?
Well, my parents were separated, but I did live with a very controlling dad. So I actually left when I was like 14. So I was
14?
out of there. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. But by the time I was 17, I had my daughter. So I found myself very quickly.
So, okay.
Right back in a sense.
Okay. Yeah. It's crazy that you can see something like that in the birth chart, huh? Interesting.
Yeah. No, you've nailed everything.
Okay. Then we have Mars in conjunction with the okay, Mars is in conjunction with Saturn, which means you're definitely capable of hard work. If you're passionate about it, you don't stop. You can definitely work long hours, discipline yourself. Shouldn't be a problem. Saturn trine the ascendant, I covered that. Okay. Let's see. Venus in the 5th, Mars in the 5th, Mercury in the 6th. What's in the 9th? Neptune is in the 9th. Okay, Neptune is in the 9th. Your way, no, sorry, it's not in the 4th. It's 5th to 4th. What is in the 9th here? You have no planet in the 9th. Yeah. So the 2nd house is very pronounced in your birth chart, which is has to do with material possessions. That's something that you have to master in this lifetime. Then we have the 4th house, which is the house of family, where a lot of illusions were there. They have to be broken up. The desire to be free from the home life and being locked down again. Yeah. So family for you, or family tradition, all that stuff, is a source of you learned a lot of lessons through that. Essentially, Saturn taught you a lot through that, and a lot of illusions probably have been shattered about that aspect of life. Mercury, Moon. Okay, so Pluto is in your 2nd house, Lilith is in your 2nd house, and the Moon is in your 2nd house. Okay, the 2nd house is the house of material possessions. So the way you develop power in that aspect of life, which is represented by Pluto, is in combination with the Moon. So, and Lilith, which means, look, your destiny, you're completely in harmony with your purpose already, with what you're doing here. Your purpose is essentially using your intuitiveness, which is the Moon, in order to gain power in that area of life. So essentially what that would mean is the way for you to make sure that your material life is always covered is to go deeper into your intuitiveness, more work with the universe, pretty much exactly what you're doing here, and using that to gain resources in some way or another. I believe that if you follow this path, you will always be in demand. So people will always demand your services, and you'll be blessed. And that's how you come into your power in that aspect of life. Because as you described it to me, it probably wasn't easy for you to develop a strong position in that house. At least that's what I'm seeing here. So the moon is the tool that you can use to generate power there. So your intuitiveness is your tool to master the material plane and its resources. So exactly what you're doing there. That's perfect. And as long as you stay on that path, you'll be fine. Your sun is in the 7th. Sun is in the 7th. Hold on, let me look at the aspects here. Sun, trine Pluto, Sun opposition the ascendant. Okay. Yeah. So essentially, here's what's going on. You, for the majority of your life, you probably were misunderstood. So the intention of what you're trying to do is completely misinterpreted. So the ascendant and the sun, which is your intention, are like opposite. Some people are lucky where the expression and the intention are harmonious, so the energies are not misunderstood or misinterpreted. But for you, that's not the case. So you have to work on using the energy of your ascendant to express the sun sign. So you're Pisces, right?
Yeah.
Sun sign, but you have a Virgo ascendant and Saturn on top of that ascendant. So how do I express that? Deep down, you probably want to hug the person or whatever and be like, oh, I totally know what you're going through, but you would probably sit there and try to analyze it, or it comes across as if you're analyzing it, and it could come across as if you're not even empathizing with the person. Completely. So that's basically your trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's not as bad as with me, I guess, because for me, like I have a Scorpio ascendant and my moon is in Pisces. So I'm actually a very empathetic person deep down. I really feel other people's pain and all that stuff, but I often come across as a dick. You know, that's a Scorpio ascendant. So yeah, so it's a learning process on how to express those energies for sure. Moon trine Jupiter. I mean, yeah, I guess that gives you a rough idea.
It does. That's so awesome that you just did that. Thank you.
Welcome.
It's insane how much you can extract from like the natal charts and how it like really mirrors your life. Like, and it's also interesting to see where you are on that path, like knowing, like, you know, you're saying like my path will be with like my intuitive abilities, letting that lead me. It's something that I've known pretty much since like I was quite young, that I would be doing these things, but ran from it as much as I could because it would signify the death of a normal life. You know, it's exciting when people get to have the benefit of like, you know, higher intuitive abilities and things like that, but it comes with a burden. It comes with a price. And that can be in loneliness, you know, at times, which is something that I say honestly at this point in my life. But the more honest I've been, the more I have been making connections with people that I can actually have a conversation with and feel resonant. Like today, it's like healing. It's really, really nice to speak to somebody who, you know a lot more than I do in a lot of this. And what a gift that is. You know, I'd recognize that. And, you know, that helps part of the process in accepting what you have to let die in order to nourish a new garden. You know, the new seeds you must plant to take it seriously because you know it's going to bear the most beautiful fruit. And that's been something, you know, I definitely have wrestled with. I think the spirits that have helped me felt like they were baptizing a cat because I wouldn't have done it unless they T-boned my car, you know, in that accident. that was when it was like, come on, Robin, it's time. And it all started, from that moment on. It's been hard. It's been trial by
I hear
fire.
that. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's really interesting how many times I hear that, where people have to go through a massive crisis in order to finally embrace this, which is kind of understandable. I get it. It's like, but man, I can't even blame people, because most people that portray this bullshit, I mean, that portray this stuff, magic, they make it so awkward and so weird, bro. I wouldn't want to be part of that crowd either. It's like, bro, can you just be normal, right? But a lot of those people, they just fucking become really, really weird. And I believe you see, a lot of people in, especially people that are attracted to the occult, and I say that as an occultist myself, have mental health issues, a lot of them. And they try to justify their weirdness through this alternative lifestyle of magic and the occult and black magic, and all of a sudden, well, don't judge. No, I mean, it's something that is empowering, and you really have to look at the person and their results in life. That's the only way you can judge an individual. And a lot of people end up on drugs when they walk this path. A lot of people, they're just delusional, and there's a lot of ego, a lot of narcissism that's involved there. But and you're lucky, because you were a mature person already. You were an adult before you entered this, But a lot of people, they're just not ready for it. So
Yeah, you really need to be able to like feel like, is this good for me? Like, what is this person saying? Like, what are these teachings? Because it just takes people like off their path a lot of the time. And I've actually become like almost like repelled. Like when somebody looks spiritual, I'm like, stay away from me. Like, I want to have like friends in all walks of life, to be able to learn from people who've mastered different areas, and to like be diverse in my interests. I don't want to just, clock out of this 3D realm and just be all a love and light Tinkerbell all the time. And it's you see that in the new age, and it like disgusts me, because I was in it at one point, and it's so predatory. Like, I found myself in the new age when I was looking for healing and help with my psychic abilities, that just like they just started one day, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know what it meant, but I found myself in like a Shark Tank, that it's like it was almost like evil disguised as light. And I went through like different scams, and like I was a hypnosis practitioner for a while, and these people think they're channeling like the galactics, and they're so unprofessional. And it's like they're not willing to take accountability for the fact that they're fucking unqualified. Like, they shouldn't be messing around in somebody's psyche. It's nobody wants to take responsibility when the use of a higher power, like the name, oh, we're going to give you this energy upgrade, they use buzzwords and fluff and bullshit, and people don't use discernment, because they're like, oh, well, it's from a higher power, so it must be good. So when I really got a taste of like that poison after being in it, it's just like I had such disdain for it, because it's just not what it appears to be. Like, I want straight up, I want honest, and like I don't need to look like a healer to be one. I don't need to look like anything else. Like, I just want to be myself. And the more I see people trying to like dress the part and put on this like mask or persona, the more I'm like repelled by it. Because I just want to know who you are. Like, stop trying. Like, and you know what I also respect as part of the journey, because I fell into it too. And so it's like I get the stage they're at, but I guess part of my healing journey is it irritates me. So that's just the way it is right now. I'm just gonna let that be. But yeah, it's just been interesting to go through that, and to see how mentally unwell so many people are. And the new age is like it's like the Amazon Prime for healing, because people don't really want to acknowledge that it's like this is going to take tears and being uncomfortable and hard work to get where I want to go. You know, it's inevitable. You're going to struggle in life. What do you want to struggle for? If it looks too good to be true, probably is, because like you said, it's about the energy going in and the energy that's coming back. So what do you want that to represent? Do you want it to be your shortcut? At least when you're doing your spells and invocations and having things maybe come back like instantaneously, that didn't come instantaneously because you put in the time. You know, you live it, you breathe it. That's part of who you are. You don't clock out from it. You've paid in many, many ways. And it's beautiful when you get to receive in that way. But it certainly, you know, it is an instant, and a lot of people can't do that. They wouldn't have, I don't know. I don't think they could. Maybe they could, but I don't think they could. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like, I want to hear somebody swear. I want to hear them say really cringy things. I want to disagree with them. I want to just be able to be that upfront, because then I know where I stand. And I keep my circle small for that reason, because I want to know who's in it, because I'll feel, you know, when something is off, and that's an uncomfortable feeling. Like, I've really fought for this independence and ability to choose. And I value that so much, especially when you saw that polarity in my chart. Like, I crave freedom, and it's such a huge part of, yeah, just what makes me feel alive and what gives me passion. So I'm like, I will fucking defend that like a warrior, because I know what it's like to have it taken away. So, and it's nice to feel that, to feel like you can be on your own 2 feet, to be like, I have a full fucking cup. So when I invite you into my life, you're setting like this new standard. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to grow from you. It's just, the better it gets, the better it gets. But it all comes down to, it's like, do you know what's in front of you? And a lot of people don't. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it all, I think, how do I put this? I mean, everybody has their own path, right? Everybody has to make their own decisions, like you said it before. Some people can't. Some people are just caught up in other things, and they have other obligations. But I believe you can turn anything into a spiritual growth thing, you know, because at the end of the day, it's all about getting to know yourself, and you can only get to know yourself in the struggles of daily life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you really learn who you are. I mean, everything is theory until the rubber hits the road. And then you'll learn, right? And all those light workers, they're just like, I can't take them serious, because they're all full of shit, guaranteed. And I can prove that with just pure logic. Everything that I said so far, I challenge anyone in the fucking comments or wherever, you know, send me an email if you think that anything was logically wrong and in the sequence of my monologue, dialogue, whatever you want to call that. Please call it out. But through pure logic, I could show that most of these people, 99% of those light workers, are just full of shit, you know. And if you don't see that, I guess it's your problem. Here's the thing, man. Humans just don't want to take responsibility, and humans don't want to, like, humans just avoid pain, and pain/discomfort is what is required to grow. And that applies psychologically. That applies. It's much easier to wait for the fucking aliens to save us and to save the planet than it is to actually, you know, work on ourselves, right? No fucking alien cares about us. No fucking alien. Maybe they care about us, but more like you care about an ant colony or something like that, right? So you can only grow. You can't outsource your spiritual growth. That's basically what I'm trying to say. You can't outsource your spiritual growth. You do what you have to do in order to grow. Now, I believe that it's best to voluntarily suffer, like you choose your poison, if that makes sense, because that's really the best way to live, in my opinion. Because what's worse is to run away from the pain. You know, I learned that in martial arts. And once again, you can transfer that into the mental world as well. You know, there's psychological pain, but there's also physical pain. They're not the same, however, they're similar. So I got kicked so bad over and over and over and over again, and it just fucking hurt, and it was really bad until I learned to just not resist the pain. and then it was half as bad. You know, and that's a lesson I learned early on, and that I transfer that into daily life, the emotional stuff that we all go through, the emotional pain that we experience. You know, as, when you stop resisting the pain, the suffering is gone, or it's still there, but it's not as bad. So people literally run from the shadow of their own mind because they don't want to confront the discomfort there. You know, this is also the reason why people have a problem with meditation. This is why people have a problem with doing yoga, because yoga confronts you with the pain and the tension in your body. The body holds the energy of the discomfort. We can't even help that. We have this subtle resistance to any negativity. You know, it could even be just a miscommunication, but very, very subtly, the body tensens up, and that is kept in the body until we stretch it out again. And then for a split second, it shows up in the mind, but after that, you're free of it. So experiencing the pain for a very, very short amount of time is part of the healing process. Now, the less you identify with this system that is experiencing the pain, the easier it is. But that, you know, takes a while until you realize it. But generally speaking, people run away from their own shadow for the most part, run away from their own shadow, and then they blame others and project it onto them. You know, this person, like we just said it earlier, you know, you remind that guy why he's so embarrassed that every week he has to go to his dominatrix and, you know, gets a butt plug up his ass or whatever, right? And you reminded him of that. I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. People have always, like you said, it's either they love me or they hate me. And it's nice to have that kind of reflected back, because even when I'm like not consciously like trying to read somebody, I was doing it anyways. You know, I don't mean to, but just being in their presence, it's like you can just know. You can like sniff it out. You're like, yeah. I find it I kind of like the intimidation. You know, it's like that. I have these like two polarities within me, and like one is this like wholesome grandma. Like I'm really, really sweet, but then the other side is like kind of intimidating to people, bit of a freak, not very nice. Like it's like the two aspects, angel devil. And I don't know. I kind of at first I ran from that aspect of me. Like I cloaked myself in kindness for so long, because I didn't like that side of like, I knew if I let it out, I'm like, oh, she's savage. She's so savage. But the more that, you know, I've worked with spirits and gone on this journey, the more, yeah, like integrated that side has become.
Do you think that's like a cultural thing?
Of course, like, in a sense, yeah. Women are taught, you know, to be, you know, you want to obey authority, you know, keep quiet. And I also had a tumultuous upbringing with my mother. So I saw aspects of me when they were very poisonous and what it could become. And so a part of me wanted to take my darkness and put it in a box so that I didn't go and do the same. So, you know, in return, I created this. It's almost like the, have you seen Moon Knight, the Disney show? So he has like a split personality, and it's like this, he had created this like very nice version of himself to like get through hard times in his life. But you know, the core of him is like a warrior. But it was almost like fragmented, which is why I think people like going into meditation and for myself, journey work has been so beautiful in meeting these aspects of myself and coming face to face with them. The first one I ever did, like spirit sat me down at a picnic of all places with my shadow self. And they're like, you're going to sit here until you're not triggered by her. And I just had to sit there, and I saw all of the thoughts and the deeds, like everything. I'm like, oh, what is that? You know, but the more I did it, the more I was like, I really love her, and let that part exist. But it's like in that dance, in your own polarity, letting them both exist, and then having that integrate together. Like I used to be called a mute, which is really funny. I'd be so quiet, huge social anxiety, Yeah. Which is funny now because I'm very opinionated, but I will stay very quiet if I feel, if I don't feel like speaking, I just won't. Like I'm selective, and I like to talk about the things I'm passionate about, and I can really engage in a dialogue if I'm lit up about it. But if I'm not interested, they'll be like, she's a bitch. Because I'll just stay really quiet. But I'm like, I just don't have anything, beneficial to add, so I won't. But at least that's me being authentic. Um, but yeah, through the entrepreneurial journey, forcing yourself out of your comfort zone, trying things, even with magic, having things blow up in your face, you kind of get over the fear and kind of get over yourself and kind of learn to live in like the dissent, the disorderly, the chaos, so that it also kind of brings in that the orderly. You can kind of have both, because you kind of need both when you're working with magic. You have to be okay with both. But I wouldn't have been okay with that level of uncertainty and trust if it wasn't for bringing this other aspect of myself out and letting her exist and take the reins, because that's where my confidence comes from. That's where my, gusto and my out there ideas and writings and things, it's coming from yeah, just these little parts. I could talk forever.
Yeah, that's fine. It's really interesting. I'm listening. I find it interesting. Yeah, these different parts of you that you speak of, which is really interesting. And a lot of people experience it like that. However, I don't necessarily see it as like different personalities. I see the personality more on a spectrum of emotions, if that makes sense. So my personality in a certain emotional state will act like this. In another emotional state, it will act a different way. So I try to structure my life like this. So there's no, what I'm trying to say is essentially I don't like to, because the language that we use has very much an effect on how we experience life. Mm-hmm. So if I, through my language, externalize a certain aspect of myself, I simultaneously lose control over it. Mm. And why is control so important? And why can't I just do that? Because it's not going to disappear. It's just going to be outside of my awareness, and it's going to keep acting. Like, let me give you an example. I have a friend, and she has like a gambling problem. She had a gambling problem until I use my magical power to heal her from that. Okay, so just, let me give you an example. So she had a gambling problem. She wasn't a friend. She was like, we were like doing things anyways. So she told me that she has this gambling problem, and I set her down and just asked her the same question over and over and over again, like 20 times. So why do you gamble? She's like, I don't know. Why do you gamble? Told you I don't know. Why do you gamble? And she kept going and going and going. Why do you gamble? Fuck, I don't know why I gamble. Just stop fucking asking this question. And eventually it was like, well, I don't want to be a good girl all the time. Then I kept asking, and eventually it was like, well, I inherited that money anyways. I don't deserve it. Boom. Now this created a release in her mind. And then she didn't have that problem anymore, because what she decided subconsciously was she doesn't deserve the money. So in some way or another, she has to get rid of it. Now, this was a subconscious aspect outside of her awareness, and it took charge of her actions, even though she didn't want to do that. It took charge of her actions, and she was getting rid of the money. So this is how a lot of those things work. And if we put them, even through our language, we program ourselves. Through our language, if we put them outside of ourselves, and if we compartmentalize them, we're losing control of those. And that can lead to negative consequences. In fact, almost always it leads to negative consequences. So I try to own every aspect of myself. It's not like, oh, this evil Frank or my evil twin yelled at you. No, it was me in an emotional state that was completely fucking justified. So stupid, I wouldn't have to yell at you if you didn't act stupid. Like, anyway, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's best to own every single aspect of oneself, and then to choose to just respond differently, I guess. So I mean, that's just a side note though, but every upside has a downside, right? Every upside has a downside. So this mechanism that can be used for, you know, creating split personalities, can be used for MK Ultra, brainwashing, and all that shit, can also be used magically to our benefit, because we can use that consciously in a way where we create sigils, and this sigil is uploaded into the subconscious mind and immediately suppressed. So it gains life on its own in our subconscious. Essentially, I mean, a part of our energy is split off from our conscious awareness, and it takes on a life of its own. And at that point, we can manifest things around us that we actually would want. You know, so every upside has a downside in life. And same with this. This is what a lot of people are. Do you know that a lot of people are scared of talking about the subconscious and the psychology and stuff like that? To a lot of people, this is really uncomfortable. They get really they get really uncomfortable when you talk about these things. I mean, you and I, we have a lot of Scorpio aspects, so we're totally comfortable with this. But yeah, a lot of people would really get uncomfortable talking about subconscious things that have to be played out in a BDSM context and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I found that to be such a funny thing. Like, it's like everybody always thought I was quiet, but it was never that I was quiet. It's just I was uninterested, you know, because people don't want to talk about the things that I wanted to talk about. They don't want to kind of go deep, because I will. You know, I'm the kind of girl that I'll stay up all night and just chat and like break down theories and stuff. And that's when I'm really having a good time. But yeah, I can sense it off people. So I'm like, oh, what I have to say is unwanted. And then it's like you kind of get hit with like, they're like, no, because it's just not their thing. And I get it. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's a taboo for a reason. So I don't know. I don't think it'll change either. Like, humans are so stuck in their ways. I mean, it's just time goes on, and I don't know. It's like we're progressing, but regressing. It's getting better in ways. Sometimes it's just, I kind of enjoy how like vulgar the music has gotten, and all of like this stuff. Like I just think it's people being honest. Like, I understand there's
Really?
like an agenda at play, like the destruction of a lot of organic ways of living. I understand and I see it, but there's also a part of me that like kind of relishes in it, because I'm like, well, at least like, you know, people are like, oh, it's so bad, and it's like, yeah, and that's what we're like. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, how do I put this? How do I put this? I guess here's what I would say. It's essentially the thing. Okay, how do I express this correctly? Give me 1 second to gather my thoughts, which is essentially the following thing. I think the one of the highest values. I mean, once again, it depends on a person's values. Okay, so let me break down my value system to you, because in this life we have to pick an identity, right? In order to play the game of life. Now, what constitutes an identity? So, what is your beingness? In my world, a beingness consists of, first of all, the goals that I have. So, what is the goal? Why do I want that goal? And my values, right? So, what are my values, right? So if my value is basically doing things that are constructive and positive for the environment, it means that this whole process of becoming aware of oneself must lead to a more constructive expression. So what does that mean? I don't believe that promiscuity and you know, like, I don't know who you're talking about there, but like, let's say rappers like these, the Cardi B or whatever, like that. To me, personally, I think this is pure degeneracy, because like it's one way to do that with like, of course, in the bedroom with a partner or whatever, you can do whatever the fuck you want, right? And you can get as nasty as you want, all that stuff, right? However, I believe to promote that and to have kids, young girls, impressionable girls listen to that cannot lead to anything positive. I really don't believe that. Not because it's suppressing their freedom. I just don't believe that it's supposed to be expressed in that way. I believe there's always a fine line between degeneracy and just being fully honest, you know. And I think most of what's in pop culture these days is just pure degeneracy. It's just clout chasing. It's shocking people, but I don't think there's anything valuable that comes out of that. So, people have gotten maybe more honest, yes, but if you I think there is definitely degeneracy. What I'm saying, what I was saying earlier doesn't mean that I think everything's okay. I don't think you should have sex with dogs. I don't think you have, like, I don't think that's right. So it's not that everything goes, if that makes sense. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
let me try to say that in a concise way, because I'm kind of rambling right now. I just think not everything is okay, and a lot of what's being promoted, I think, is just sick, to be honest.
So I can see this from like a both and. So
Okay.
there's a part of me just with, say, my love for well, I have like a sexual nature, so like that the honesty in people. So like I get that. It's like you think back to like the Romans having the orgies and how, like, you know, prevalent like sexuality and stuff like that was in society. So like in that expression, especially for women over the ages, like how suppressed we have been, or like trying to fit into that gender role. So in a sense, like there is like that liberation. And then I also understand and care about, you know, I have a daughter who's influenced by these things, and the poisonous side of that is like when you get into like that prostitution energy, you know, it's like there's like the sacred whore, or like the prostitute. It's like where you're prostituting your energy out, you're lowering your standards. Like the music, like, okay, when they're just like pussy, money, weed, you know, it's not really that enlightening, you know. It's like I'm cautious of what I listen to, because I know it's just like going right into my subconscious. So I'm like, I want to listen to things that are going to help me create a beautiful and nourishing life for myself. That's important to me. Being intentional about the things we consume, it's very important. I recognize what's healthy and good, what an indulgence is, and like what's just total trash. So it's like I see that, but being able to just, I don't know, let these things exist. Like there's obviously, like I said, like in I've heard you talk about it too, like that agenda at play with like the powers that be, population control, things like that happening. There's a huge push to like masculize, I'm saying that for the women to become more masculine, hyper independent. I don't need anybody. Men becoming weaker. So it's kind of just, it's the downfall, you know, of society in a sense. Just we've really lost touch with like our warrior, and it's like to be able to have, like the submissive woman and the dominant man, but like in a healthy expression. It's so different than what we see, you know, the Kardashians. What the fuck is that? It is chaos. It's just pollution. It's a mind parasite, a lot of it. But I don't know, once in a blue moon, I'm like, oh, I just need like to watch some like horrible trash TV, but not to like swim in it or live in it. That makes sense.
I get it. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, like even obviously I'm aware of societal changes and like, okay, there's an agenda behind it. Maybe, I mean, absolutely, there's an agenda behind it. But I'm an occultist first and foremost, and I see everything that happens in the physical world as an expression of some sort of an energy dynamic on the other side, right? So we're in an astrological cycle where, you know, these astrological energies and these cosmic energies are taken on a form in one way or another. If it wasn't this conspiracy, it would be another conspiracy. If it wasn't this government, it would be another government. It's just the cycles of time that express themselves in this moment in time in the physical 3D world in a specific way. So there's not really much that can be done about it. I'm not all for like, oh, let's save humanity, let's save society, and let's go back to the 1950s and all this bullshit. Absolutely not. No, I just believe personally that there's a, how do I describe that? I think everything exists on a spectrum, like I said earlier, right? And it's never that extreme. So I have just personal preferences, I guess, and all I can do is judge from my personal preferences. You see what I mean? Listen, if anyone wants to do something like that, or someone thinks that Cardi B is a great role model, like obviously I can't stop them. And you know, whatever happens, happens there. Like it's their own life. But me personally, my personal preferences would be something different. And I can only speak from my own mind, which is like in my mind, that shit is completely disgusting. And I think teaching girls the mindset of a prostitute can't lead to anything positive. Obviously I'm not a woman, and I would never claim to be able to understand what it's like to be a woman in society. I just don't understand that, you know. I'm like, obviously, I just can't imagine that it can be beneficial to anyone to look at people like this, you know, to use your body as an ATM or whatever, you know, and to just undiscernibly, or I just don't think it's natural for a woman, just like purely biological. I don't think it's natural for a woman to not care whose sperm she lets in her body. I mean, you say whatever you want. I don't know, maybe you agree with me or not, but I think there's a difference between, like, as a woman, you take something into your body. There's still a difference between what a man does and a woman. What a man penetrates, a woman lets the sperm come into her body. He penetrates her. I don't think a woman feels good if, or what am I trying to say here? I don't think it makes sense biologically to just just use that for money. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, and I completely agree with that. I think, you know, there's a lot of really unhealthy sexuality being promoted, which, you know, even in like for men, like porn and stuff, it just it warps, you know, your expectations, and like it hijacks your dopamine, where it's like you can't even like function as a normal human. Before we know it, like people are just gonna have sex with robots and be totally content with it. You know, it's just instant gratification. We live in a society of instant gratification. But one thing that like I want to bring more to life, at least with the legacy I live here, is like bringing more of like the sacred back, like bringing the sacred back into the word sacred, more of like that organic life path, and kind of discovering all of that entails as I go, finding a healthy way to replace, you know, old behaviors or ways we've been taught. And, you know, you kind of have to have had, you know, you've kind of had to like be in something, come out of it, and then found a new way to be able to really help people, in a sense. Like the women that are going to be like in my generation behind me, like I look forward to being a safe place for them to unpack what they've been doing, their destructive behaviors and things, having a safe place to come to somebody who has like worked through it themselves and be like, and they're so much better. You know, you don't know how good it can get. You've been sold a lie. I think that would be.
I think the main problem with all of this is that people don't understand that sex mainly takes place in the mind. And what I'm really good at is recreational hypnosis. I don't know if you know what that is. Like that's essentially sexual hypnosis. I've been what's the word? So the reason why porn is so popular is because it gives one a visual impression of sex, and that's the direct gateway into the mind. However, people that then actually try out this stuff find that it's actually not as pleasurable as they thought it is, because in your mind you can do all kinds of different things, but if you do it in real life, it feels very, very different, you know. And people can't believe me. Trust me, I speak from experience. So what I'm saying is, sex actually takes place in the mind, and that's why that's what I said earlier. It's like the real intimacy is really mental. So, but for in order to open up to someone mentally, it requires a lot of intimacy. So it's foolish to believe that just sleeping around is going to bring any kind of satisfaction. What you really need, or what I would say people really need, is a form of intimacy where they can mentally connect to the other person, and then have a combination of a mental, spiritual, and physical experience. And that is really what creates the satisfaction they crave. Like this is a natural instinct. Everybody wants to experience that. But this illusion that porn feeds people is just that. It's an illusion. Real sex doesn't look like a porn movie. You see what I mean? But at the same time, it's much more fulfilling. I mean, the most important part of like I said, sex is essentially, especially if you can use psychic abilities to kind of like guess, to see what's going on there. You can enter the person's mind, and then kind of like see what they actually crave deep down, even things that they can't even verbalize and really say. And then just go into that role and allow the person to be in that moment. And it's almost like a trance that they enter. And at that point, this is the height of sexual pleasure. Really, it's a combination of spiritual, mental, and physical. But if it's purely physical, it's literally just it's just uncomfortable, and everybody's going to feel awkward afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people just don't know how to have sex. You know, like what you just said, that's so foreign to most people. Like most people just haven't come close to it. Like I haven't, whatever. But like, it's even like, yeah, to use your psychic abilities during something like that. I know in like the next stages of my life, one thing I wanted to study and like learn more about is like sex magic and using that, because I understand how powerful it is. I've seen it being taught, but it's something I'm just like, yeah, you don't want to learn that from the wrong person. And there's so much information out there.
What specifically did you research about that topic?
Not a lot. I know like some people will, you know, try to hold an image in their mind at the moment of orgasm to like manifest it in. So using that to like focus the energy. I was told once by a coach, and I couldn't do it, to give money a lap dance. I tried. And it was
to give like, who a lap dance?
She wanted money, you know. It was like, she was like, oh, we're doing sex magic. This was like a year ago. I was in a silly coaching container, and she was like, oh, we're doing sex magic. And I don't know, for me, I was like, I can't do this. I feel like an idiot. I ended up making a parody video of the whole experience on my old socials to like, I don't know, help me deal with my shame. What we were told to do. So there's like a lot of different ideas about it. So that's, I don't know, like briefly, just a little bit of my experience with it, but I haven't really taken it seriously because I just don't know enough yet. Like when you're studying like magic and the occult, like you need so many lifetimes to get through how much you need to know, you know. Like I have a book problem, like my bedside, like my bedstand. I have like probably 20 books that I have like open, and I like, you know, I'm always on the go with information. So it's, you know, it's a process to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it. I've been doing this for a while. Okay, so like I have, and as you do something often, you figure out a process on how to do things faster, and like so ever since I was 21, every no, sorry, 23, 24, every woman that I got involved with, I would do things like this, rituals, and it's usually like this. First of all, in the birth chart, you can usually see like where the expression of certain energies, right? And the magical power lies in the conflicts between the different polarities, because energy has to flow between 2 points. You see, as you look at the birth chart and you look at the different energies and the polarities, you can usually see where the energy potential is, and that has an effect on the psyche, where the kinks and the fetishes come from. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to understand the person energetically, and then yeah, you can use the birth chart to do that, but you could also use like a BDSM kink test, you know, what really turns you on and stuff like that. Now, obviously it's important that the person is then honest about it. And then there's usually a certain persona and yeah, a certain persona and role that is taken on. And persona is a mask, right? It's like the expression of those energies combined in the bedroom. And then the partner has to have the ability to really allow the person to live that and to like go with the flow. I'm really good at basically enjoy seeing the woman getting to her, like, to the highest heights, if that makes sense, or it's like go very, very deep. That's my pleasure, because I'm like, I have a Venus in Scorpio, and the Venus in Scorpio is essentially is very good for something like that, if you know what I mean. So the process is really showing her who she is, taking her there and allowing her to live out that stuff. And then this is where the energy is then released. Now, with that, a lot of taboo aspects come up. With that, a lot of kinks come up, which is not really taboo. It's taboo if you have societal programming, like this should be there, this shouldn't be there. I should be like this, I shouldn't be like this. At the end of the day, it's nothing evil. It's nothing bad. It's just something that is an aspect that wants to be expressed. That's all. And as a good sex magician, you're able to spot that, you know, and over time you develop kind of like a knowingness, you see, and then you just help the person express that.
Oh, that's so interesting. And it's so weird that this is a weird conversation for people. That's the strangest thing. It's like, yeah, we all do it. It's not that strange, but that's interesting. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. You know, there's also like, but sexuality is not only psychological, in my experience. I mean, it's also definitely hormonal levels definitely also play a role. I've been studying this for a while, like sexual behavior in an evolutionary context, biologically, but also magically, spiritually, and all that stuff. So it's kind of like a combination. There are psychological aspects, there are spiritual aspects, but also like purely biological aspects, like hormonal levels. The lower the testosterone level, the more the man will tend to be submissive. There's actually a correlation there. You know, so I mean, it's a science in itself. It's really interesting, and you're right. I don't understand why, or I know why, obviously, because of religion and all that stuff. But it's definitely something that has not been explored and studied enough. Especially female sexual psychology has been a taboo for a very long time. It's, at one point, I'm sure they believe that women don't even have sexual desires, right? So
female hysteria.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and I guess that really calls you into like keeping your body like clean and pure, just with like all the estrogen that they pump into foods and all the hormones and like you know, factory farming meat and fluoride in the water and all of this like stuff that's just like got people out of whack. Like even women on birth control, they'll be attracted to a different type of man if they're on birth control. Like that's so wild to see how much like as a physical human we are, like that word that funny, to see how like ruled we are by the chemicals that course through our veins, like the hormones, and how keeping a healthy like gut brain connection can influence something like your magic.
Yeah, but what you just mentioned actually means that women are not picking the partners that are actually evolutionarily and biologically the best mate. So I wonder what that's going to do to evolution or the society, you know? So because women choose, right? Women are the gatekeepers to sex.
Mm-hmm.
So they're supposed to smell which immune system provides the best offspring, right?
Yeah.
And if that's not there anymore, we're degenerating, I guess.
Well, I think that's kind of what's happening. It's like if,
and I don't know what about you, right? But you're kind of like my age. You're 32, right? I'm 38, and all these young guys that I see, there are a lot of them, not all of them, but most of them, they kind of look like girls. They're almost like they look like girls to me, for real. Like it's in the body shape, the demeanor. They're very, very feminine, extremely feminine. You know, some people would say that's the age of Aquarius. You know, they're like the androgynous, but I think it's just very different. I think it's just very different.
Yeah, well, I think some of it's from mental poisoning, a lot of suggestions. Like it's wild what, you know, suggestions can do to somebody's body physically. I read a really interesting book that was called Mental Poisoning. It's supposed to be like what black magic is, but you know, as I'm learning, I'm not taking everything verbatim from the book, but the idea was it's like you can convince somebody they're sick and they can display signs of that sickness. And, you know, taking that into like deeper psychology when it comes to different like gender roles and things. And what's happening now is like we were talking about, like the almost like reversal and the push to like feminize men. And it's really strange because like I know for myself, like that's not attractive at all. Men are supposed to be providers, they're supposed to be the protectors, the warriors, but we've lost the fight. Society, I mean, we have skip the dishes and Uber Eats, and we don't have to try, we don't have to prove anything. I mean, people just, you know, exist thinking they just deserve respect because society says everybody does, but it's not how it is, you know. In the animal kingdoms, like you earn your place, but in Canada here, we have a thing like called Timbit soccer, and everybody wins, you know, because we don't want to hurt any feelings. We're taking away their pain, which takes away their power, which creates, you know, weak, subservient humans. You know, we're just it's like we become slaves to these ideas that, yeah, it's just we're flushing the values that make us like strong humans down the toilet and replace and in return we're getting the Amazon Prime of life. And it's really weird to see it. Like I'm all for more organic living. That's kind of the vision that I have, because the earth is sick. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I mean, fuck, like we got people that are developing stuff to like, we'll just nuke our own planet if we could. Like we're immature and stupid. You know, like as a majority, and not saying everybody. I think there's, you know, some very advanced humans on this planet that hold great power to influence the outcomes. But yeah, if you see the direction you're going, like I know for a bit I sunk into like almost nihilism, because I'm like, this is just insanity. Like I don't want to partake in this. I don't even like humans anymore. That's how I felt, because it's just so weird watching the direction of all of this. And like it was strange, like for my daughter, like I remember when she was like in grade 6, like almost every girl in her class was like either gay or bisexual. And I'm like, how do you guys know that? Like how do you know? Have you kissed a girl? Have you gone down on a girl? No. Have you been with a guy? No. How, like, you got this idea, you gave it, you became that, you gave that idea your identity. And you know, you're just lost in these like labels. And that's a huge part of, I think, what has hurt, like, you know, women and men in like, oh, you have anxiety, you know, they take that on, that's who they are, that's their personality now. And it's just like people are just like grasping for things to feel better instead of confronting their pain, instead of being uncomfortable. And the more, for myself, like going through this process of like, I'm learning independence right now. Like I'm a single mom, I'm working through disability, you know, I'm fighting for my life, but it's not so that I can be hyper independent my whole life. It's to create that foundation for that relaxation and that safety, you know, to be able to enjoy my life. And, you know, it's just, people just want cheap shortcuts to what feels good. And they're not willing to put in the work. And that's why I think everything's just kind of like reversed and fell on itself. It's just weird to
yeah, but I mean, in a sense, I love this world because it's I'm very competitive naturally, you see, so I love it. Like if the less of those, or the more of those guys turn out to be like pussies, the better for me, the easier it is for me. You see what I mean? So, and I mean, there's an intrasexual competition. Men compete with men for the most part, and I mean, the less competition I have, the better for me. I don't give a fuck, really. It's hard enough, and but I agree. But I also don't have like a romantic view of the past. You know, like let's say we go back into the fucking prehistoric ages. It wasn't all sunshine and roses either. So I don't know if I would want to go back to that time.
No,
could be killed everywhere and anywhere, right? So
bringing in the balance. No.
Yeah, exactly. But I agree with you. It's just, I don't know what to say. But I mean, we're also like a different generation. You know, who knows? Like they were talking, the older guys were talking about us like that as well. You know, like, oh, these young people have no clue what's going on. I still think all these young guys are pussies. Okay, but I'm an old guy, right? I'm pushing 40 right now. So I guess, even though they say I look like 30, but you know, it's true.
Yeah, I didn't think you were that old.
Yeah, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I hope
it's a good thing. It's a good thing. You look young.
Immature.
No, you look young.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, how to bring in that balance now. I think that nature kind of, you know, when we work in polarities, and even myself and like my own growth journey, like sometimes it's like the pendulum sways and it's like I may have too rigid boundaries for a while and it balances out. I might go too hard in the paint in this, you know, one area of passion for a while, and then it kind of balances out. And I feel like we're in that, like we're in quite a polarity right now. I mean, the world's gone crazy. It feels like the world's gone crazy because we're aware of it. We have technology. But I think something will give. And nature is obviously a force to be reckoned with. As a magician, and we want to bring balance and harmony into our lives, well, is nature not the greatest magician? And you know, to see how she's going to deal with this, I think it'll come with destruction and some pain. I think we could go through some very interesting times, but you know, I guess that's just the era we chose to live in. And I think like what a gift it was for myself. Like I love my aspects in my chart, because when shit hits the fan, people are going to want to come to somebody like me or like you that can, like, you've been through it, you can hold yourself through it. It's like the more you meditate, the closer you become to death, the more you're able to steer people when they can't see past their panic. And, you know, we need these, like lighthouses is what I would call it, in dark times. You know, you kind of have to have been in the underworld to be able to be that light. And that's so needed. I think that's one of the ways forward. It's going to be, you know, the era that comes next is when we lift up the carpet and people are like, oh my God. And that's when it's just like, hey, it's cool. It's cool. We got this.
How would you like to influence like the world around you? How would you like to have an impact? Or rather, what impact would you like to have on people around you?
I want them to feel something sacred. That is like my love language. Whatever I do, I want to do with my whole heart. I like any client that comes to me, like I really want to make sure they see their potential, that they leave not needing me, that they're able to connect to these beautiful unseen energies, that they're able to have authority over their life or vision. Like maybe it's vision is my love language. I want to connect people to the feeling that it's like once I got a taste of what I was capable of, even when I couldn't see where I was going, the feeling magnetized me out of hard places, of my destructive patterns, and it continues to do so. It's like my guiding, I almost want to say a light, but it's a feeling. And if people could just have that for a moment, if they could just feel that, I think it could help break the hypnosis that they're under, to kind of have just a feeling of clarity. And it's like, if I could just give that gift to people, this world would be a phenomenally better place. And I'm one person in it, but I know the energy of like when somebody is in their power and in their balance, like that it just shakes the whole earth. It moves through, what do you call it, the Higgs field, like it just goes. And it's the opposite of like the mind parasite. It's like that light that can just, or like a beautiful little seed that can be planted in people's mind. And that to me is like the most important thing, and yeah, my passion above all things. And that's sacred. And it's simple, but it just starts with an honest intent and an open heart. And that's what I would do. How about you?
Yeah, what you just said, Kant, the philosopher, he calls that the sublime, like this thing that cannot be spoken. It's like a knowingness of the sacred, something greater than oneself, right? Okay, what I would like to do is essentially, well, man, how do I put this? I believe that any magician at one point, when you join the rank of adepts on the other side, because there are many that came before us, you will be approached in the spirit world by others for certain things, for certain tasks. So the physical world, I think this is important to say, the physical world is almost nothing. It is, even if you look at cosmology, they say that the whole physical universe with all stars, planets, galaxies, and all that stuff, that's like 4% of what exists, right? And when you go out of body and experience and like interact with all those spirit worlds, you begin to understand how insignificant the physical world actually is. And it's literally just a reality frame where we can't have certain experiences in a certain context, right? So what happens to someone who explores the occult and becomes a magician is essentially they become a force on the other side itself. They become like a, similar to, let's say, a planetary energy or an angel or a demon or stuff like that. These are transcendent forces that have some form of an effect on the physical, and they have all their agendas and they're all working together. Neither side can win, because that would mean that the game ends. So, like I said it earlier, nature will always bring balance to it all. It might go into one direction, but it will always swing back. So this game is never going to end. But you become a force on the other side that has their way and their intention itself, and you just keep participating in the same game, just at a different level. So I'm just here to, it's essentially like this. One thing that we all have to learn is that what we do for others will come back to us manyfold. And this is the hardest part, because for that we have to ignore the ego for once, because the ego, this animalistic part within us, is really greedy. It's really greedy. It doesn't want to share. It's very jealous, all that stuff, right? But as we become more spiritual, when I say spiritual, I mean that in a sense we begin to see more with the heart and our intuition than we see with the eyes and the physical senses. Then we begin to communicate with the universe, and that message teaches us way more than words ever could, right? So at that point, you realize that it is all a feedback mechanism. And in order for you to grow, you have to try to make the outside grow. Even just the attempt to help somebody else will bring that energy back to you, and not just like one equals one, but it's more like exponentially will come back to you. So my goal, my biggest value is evolution, spiritual evolution, and because of that, like I don't need the money. I don't need any of that. I don't care if people admire me. I don't care if people know, oh, okay, well, Frank is such a great. I don't give a fuck. But I have to keep doing this, because the only way for me to keep growing is help others grow. And that's my goal is evolution. My goal is growth. And the best way to do that is to serve others in their growth. And through that, I can see it instantaneously. Like I'm buying a company right now, and I needed like a lot of help. So what I started doing is training a younger guy on how to do that. A couple of days later, a guy comes into my life. He's been in the game for 30 years, unlimited capital, boom, like completely different level. And these effects happen all the time. It's basically you help somebody do what you want, and for some reason it comes to you from the universe. So, but everybody has to try it out themselves. So this is for everybody who's listening. If you want something, help somebody else get it and see how it comes to you, because that inflow equals outflow. You first have to put out the energy for what you want to come in. You see, you want kindness from people, be kind to people. You want honesty from people, be honest to people. And always ask yourself, what do I have to put up in order to get what I want? What do I have to, what do I have to bring to the table in order to want this thing? So all of you girls out there who think all you need is some tits and ass to get a great guy, that's not going to be enough. Because if he's a really good guy, he's going to have brains. He's going to have all kinds of different things. So what are you bringing to them? All the guys out there who want all of these beautiful women. A beautiful woman has all the choices in the world. Like, what the fuck? Why would she pick you? So, and the same applies to everything else. You have to ask yourself, what am I putting out into the universe to deserve what I want? That's it.
Yeah, the law of circulation. It's actually been that has been one of the areas that like I grew the most in, was like learning to give more, give my time. Like I started volunteering. There's a place called like the Men's Street Ministries, and it's near Toronto, and I didn't have money to give, but I would go and I'd pick up like loaves of bread, and he'd give me like big jars of peanut butter and jam, and like my kids and I would make like 100, 200 sandwiches, bring it back. And it was like teaching. It's like, this is how we help our communities. This is how we grow. And that feeling is like the most beautiful thing. So I'm like, my why is in, it's like, if I could do or be or have or give, create anything in this world, what would it be? And it's like the give, the why, that's the feeling that I have like officially or originally felt. It was like, wow, when I get into this like financial position where I want to be, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to help so many single mothers. I'm going to give them Christmases. Like I'm going to support these families. I'm so excited to be in a position to like give back what was given to me, because it was in those moments, that I felt like times were in like the darkest that people gave. And that's why I'm able to serve today. And that's, what I think a lot of people have like lost connection with is like the why, that heart, the heart and the soul of like what keeps this like planet going. I think that's, you know, at the root of humanity. Although sometimes I, you know, I'm kind of like about, you know, this like the behaviors and stuff I see. Like I do know like there's also like the angel within all of us, that beautiful, beautiful feeling that, you know, it doesn't take much to make that ripple effect on this planet with the good deeds we do. And you never know who it's gonna help or what the purpose of it is, you know, like you can be somebody's miracle. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And you can do so much. And it's just interesting because you never really know like how the spirits are using you or who's going to show up to test you on that, to like, you know, put your money where your mouth is. And I always just follow that and try to be an advocate for always giving an abundance of love, because I want love to come back to me. So I always live in that. And yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I mean, we covered so many topics. Let's go into another one, right? Which is, if you're up for that. You mentioned single mothers, and there are so many out there, right?
Yeah.
So I read a statistic that as soon as, what was it? Like for some reason, I think when women started to make their own money or something like that, or when they entered the workplace, all of a sudden divorce rate went up to 50% or something like that. Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the reason that so many relationships don't work long term? Do you think we're just not built to be with one person for a long time, or do you think it's society that's destroying it, or do you think men are just there's no good men out there? Why do you think this is the direction that it's going into?
Good question. Well, I think that because of the binds of marriage, I think a lot of people stayed in situations that weren't good for them. There wasn't a lot of accountability. So, you know, when women got a dose of their freedom, their, you know, standards have raised. But I'm not saying like it's almost like it's this like triumph for women to be able to have that choice. But it's very sad for their family unit now, because people kind of treat each other like they're disposable. Tinder is just fucking demonic. You know, it's crazy because I mean it's like swipe, next. Oh, they did something I didn't like, swipe. The new age would have you believing like that's such a great thing. Like, you know, if it's not a fuck yeah, it's a big no. And, you know, I like to follow, you know, what feels good, but you have to be able to have the intuition to unearth like what that person is all about. You need to have emotional resilience to be able to work with them and grow something. Like love exists, but it doesn't exist in like that relational context. Like you're going to have the initial euphoric phase, that honeymoon phase, you're in lust with each other, but when the dust settles and you have to, you know, create a life with somebody, it's just going to suck sometimes, and you've got to be honest with each other to get through it and build it, and that takes a lot for people. It's why it's so rare. And you know, there's just not a lot of it's like people want instant gratification. You're not going to get that when you have to work so hard at something. But like you're saying, the amount of energy you put into it comes out. And I mean, there's nuances. I mean, some people, you know, put love into a relationship their whole life and, you know, they're 80 and the guy leaves her or something. Like, who knows? Like people are unpredictable. You can't know 100%. There's always an aspect of vulnerability when co-creating a life with someone. So I think it's like there's just so many layers to it. I don't know that humans are really meant to be monogamous. It's like I was married once and I don't think I'll ever do it again. I think I would like my like soul freedom with somebody. It's to be like, I'll commit to you, but I'm not marrying the government. Like, I want that person to always choose to be with me.
So would that be like an open relationship that you would get into?
You know what? I've been single for a year and a half because it's something I've been like, I've just been like humming and hawing about it, because in my relationships in the past, like it's been so painful, and I'm glad to not be in them. Like I made the right call to go through this like self-refining process to get to a point where my head can be clear enough that I can make a good assessment of an appropriate partner, because I'm not seeing through the lens of trauma. So, it's just, I don't know, I don't have like a clear answer for that, because it's not something I've really experienced. I've had the narcissist and the empath, the codependency, and that dance that Pisces they're known to get into. I've been in it. I know what it's not supposed to be like. I know it's unrealistic to think that your man will never look at another woman or never have sexual thoughts outside of you. Like it's something, it's like people just need to have like honesty and be okay with like, yeah, my partner's a fucking human. Like,
but okay, but would you agree that if a woman is truly in love with a guy, she doesn't even want to have sex with another guy? Is that true? Or can that be separated?
I actually think that is true. But I wouldn't say it's true for everybody. I think it depends on how you love, who you are to that person, how, your values, your morals. I know for myself, like I would be like so faithful and so loving, but if I get crossed, then that's when it's like it's difficult, right? But it's not like if you were like honest and open and I don't know, communicate, can't say the word, whatever, you communicated and stuff, like when somebody feels safe, there should be no reason for them to want to escape from it, if that makes sense. I'm butchering this a bit. I know for myself, like I've been very, very loyal until, say, I was cheated on or something, and then it was like I don't have a problem if you have needs and wants, but it's like when we start lying to each other, like that's when I have a problem. I don't like deceit, and you can smell it off people. I'm a seer, so I'll have a dream about it. It'll come to me one way or another. I just don't like that. That's when my walls will go up. And as you saw in my chart, I can be very, very loving. But if you deceive me, then it's like, because of what I've been through in life, it's hard. It's hard to get past that. It's why I live a more solitary life, because yeah. But like that's just like my personal opinion. I think it's the ideal. But I think like where the way I look at it now, it's like most guys cheat. And I've taught, it's just something I've seen. I've witnessed. I've talked to so many married men who, not so many, but I've talked to married men, and it's like you see the double lives they live and what they do online and all these secrets, and it makes it very hard to trust. But I had, like, when I was committed before I was crossed, like it's like I would, you would be in that with your whole heart. And I don't know. I think that's like the healthy representation, because if you do find that ideal partner that satisfies you on those levels and actually is able to get to the bottom of things, if something feels off, you talk about it, you get through it, you work through it. You have to be able to go deep. And yeah, without that, it can be superficial, and maybe that's when other desires would arise. I think humans can have like a natural attraction. They can recognize when somebody looks good, but I mean, if you just want to go and bone everybody, then that's kind of like an internal problem, I think. Yeah. That's what I think about it today. That could change.
Things definitely change. Yeah, things definitely change. So, um, yeah, I think it all depends on who you're dealing with and who you're with, right? Because like you said, I mean, it really depends on um the feeling if that relationship can be replaced, if that makes sense. Okay, so if there's only a physical component, obviously the guy is going to feel insecure, and then he's going to have to validate himself because like all he has is his body, his penis. Well, every guy has a penis, so he can't be replaced like that, but not everybody has the rest, his heart, his personality and all that stuff, right? So if the relationship is really multidimensional, then I think the link is strong, and then I think a relationship could work long term, like monogamously. Because at that point, do you even want to bring another person's energy into the mix? I don't think that would be good, right? And because there is a strong energetic link, it's impossible to have sex with another person without messing up the whole dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Now, the same applies to a woman, right? If all she has to give, and she knows all she has to give is her body, well, okay, she might be as beautiful as whatever, but there are other beautiful women out there too. So it's all about to what extent or how deep the relationship is, I guess, and on what levels it exists. But if it's like locked in all of those levels, definitely, the person's still going to be as attractive and beautiful when they're 80, because there's a spiritual connection there that lasts forever, right? But it's very hard to create something like that, and I'm not even sure if it can be created. I mean, it's either there or not. You really have to be in a situation where you feel like you connect with that person on all different levels.
Yeah, it's
And if
purely
that's not
organic.
there, yeah, exactly. I don't think you can really like force it, like a completely mundane person, like sit them down, listen. We got to connect spiritually now, okay? Please, that's like Wednesday afternoon, 5 p.m. We're gonna connect spiritually. Like, of course, that doesn't work, right? So, yeah. So, I don't know, because a lot of people that argue for, let's say, promiscuity, a lot of people that argue for like swinging and all that stuff, they always argue from a biological point of view, right? Now, obviously, if you see humans just as biological organisms, then yeah, it could make sense. Oh yeah, let your woman have sex with another guy. Yeah, no, not a problem. Biologically, it might make sense. However, if we understand that we're more than that, and if we see ourselves as more than that, you understand that there's an invisible energetic thread that connects you to the person that you're in a relationship with, and that would be either destroyed or highly, highly disturbed by her being involved like that with another man, and you would suffer. I don't believe there's. Maybe I don't know. I'm just speaking from my own perspective. You're gonna hurt yourself if you're doing that. So.
Yeah, I've witnessed like a lot of swinger couples, and I've just seen that although it's beautiful, they can be honest. It just seemed like it was filling a void, and like treating people just like they're just good for a fuck. Like it's just it becomes so empty and automatic, and it's like it's so disconnected. You're like, well, at least they're expressing one aspect, but they're missing, you know, so much of what I think what they're missing the mark. It just becomes like gambling after a point, or it becomes just another thing to fill a void, pun intended. And it's
Yeah, and
yeah.
I would wonder what kind of a man lets his woman sleep with another guy and he's okay with that. Okay, baby, fuck somebody else. Like that was that cuck. I don't get that. I really don't get that. Seriously. I mean, to each their own, but I would have a hard time even respecting that guy. Like, how can you let your woman sleep with another man and be okay with that? It's kind of sick.
Well, people like to mind fuck themselves. I mean, the whole the whole BDSM thing is all about the mind, less about the action. So maybe there's like that, he's stirring up these weird emotions within himself, and he's probably getting off on the emotions, right? Not the act. So I mean, it's interesting what makes people tick, for sure. But no, I agree with what you said. I think it's very rare to have that like true organic connection, and who even knows like what's gone into that, like how many lives you may have tried to work it out with that person, like what kind of like we use, like, I'll use the word karma there because it is, the energy you put out at one point or another. I don't really think time exists, just in, it's not linear. And yeah, it's just like what have you already put in with that person? Like, it started as a seedling once upon a time ago, but what have you guys done over time? Who have you been to each other? And that's when things get like very strange, because you could be in so many different roles in love. But that's the multidimensionality of connecting with another soul, because you may have been in so many different roles, and that brings like that completeness. And yeah, it's a work in progress, but it's a magnetic attraction. So it's, yeah, you can only go with the flow of what you feel. It's not something, if a feeling disappears, well, that's interesting, because I'm a Pisces. I get like hardcore feelings, right? Like that's what I am. I'm an artist. Yeah, I'm an intuitive being. I own it. So it's very hard for me to kind of like step away from that. So as I was saying it, I caught myself thinking about like the emotion, the intuition, but then there's also the spark. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
think,
mean,
yeah.
when it comes to, I think at the root of it all, when it comes to sex, sex is about becoming more or growing, if that makes sense. Why? Looking at the purely physical act, two people come together and they create new life. And it takes both to create new life, so like massive expansion, right? Why do we seek love, and why we're interested in that is because we don't feel alone anymore, and we feel like we grow, we expand in that whatever, in that relationship, in that moment, in that energetic connection, right? So it's all about becoming more, right? Now, from that point of view, just seeing sex as a purely physical exercise activity is like going to the bathroom. That diminishes you, and it's actually the opposite of that. So, like I said, I think it really purely has to do with the perspective that the person takes on. If they choose to see themselves and degrade themselves into these fuck machines or whatever that is, or purely like just bodies, and that's the experiences that they're going to have. But with that, the consciousness is going to decrease and it's going to contract, and that's why they feel empty afterwards. But done correctly, it should be nourishing, it should be nurturing. So when they come out of the act, they feel healed. Here's the thing. As you're having sex on all of these levels, physically and spiritually, this energy that's being created in the act is supposed to heal both parties. It's supposed to heal emotionally and spiritually. The world is a rough place, but when you do it right, in the process of having sex with each other, you can generate healing energy that regenerates you and refreshes you. So that can either lead to a new child, and think about the power of that. You're bringing new life into this world, or you use that energy to heal each other. And that's way different from what's happening in porn or just in swinger clubs. That's just purely like going to the bathroom. Yeah, I need to get this out. And yeah, I'll take any kind of sperm. I don't even give a fuck. Let me be the cum dump tonight. You see? Now, I get it. Sometimes, like there is a purely biological, instinctual level where a woman might be really turned on by that fantasy. And that's okay, but that's something for the mind. But actually doing it has different consequences. You see what I mean?
Yeah, treating the body with more intention, keeping it sacred. As like empath myself. It's like the way you know, I could intertwine with somebody, you know, like you almost form like that telepathic connection. I have a client come to me, and you know, as soon as they like reach out to me, I'll already start getting information for them. Like a connection has been well, we've been connected, and that's just from an energetic exchange. Yeah, bring your body into it. Like what are the consequences long term, especially when you're spending that type, like like the energy of an orgasm, and you're just like, fuck it, whatever, flush it down the toilet. That's such a waste of your creative life force. And I wonder, I guess over time you could see the destruction it causes in people. Because
Yeah, definitely. And it's also, I mean, there are entities connected to everything. So the frequency on what you do something also determines who receives that energy, you see. So if you engage in a lot of degeneracy, you're feeding entities that are on that frequency, and they're going to continue to feed off of you. Because if you open, like sex, you're opening up your aura like that, you know. And if you just open it up to entities like that, that will probably also act through this other person that is in a swinger club or whatever, you're opening yourself up to being vampirized by that entity, you know. However, if you do it at a frequency of what we just described, the healing part, it's a complete protection, you know, and it's being used for something else. There's literally no activity in this world that is not in some way or another connected to a spiritual force and intelligence. So
yeah,
you gotta be aware of that. And you just I mean, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, to each their own. All I'm saying is we have to be aware of what we're doing. And listen,
yeah.
I'm definitely no saint, okay? So like I understand, but I also like speak from experience, you know. Like I've worked with a lot of sex demons. I at one point I did enjoy to basically turn women into whores, if you know what I mean. Like I don't want to say anything wrong here, but like turning them into like sluts, if that makes sense. That was like a kink of mine, you know. But it's not something that it's not good for me nor the other person. So
yeah, well, we're human and we learn. I guess you explore these aspects of yourself and you're like, cool, did that, you know how it feels and what it does for your life. And it's like, at least you've had you've been able to express it. You can see it for what it is. I think, you know, the danger is when people don't, like, depending on what it is, because some people want to do some weird fucking shit. But yeah, I know for myself, when I've just like let myself just be low vibe, then it's like, okay, I did that, been there, done that. I definitely, it's not what I thought it would be, you know. And you're able to do the things, you know, you how do I want to word that? You're able to do it, and you're able to know, okay, it's not the bee's knees. Sorry, my grandma wording came out wrong. The bee's knees. This is not the beast. Oh my god.
okay, what topic did we not cover?
We've been into all the topics. To meditation, psychic ability, entities. I guess, well, an interesting way to wrap it up is well, you've talked about working with demons, and we've kind of brushed over it a little bit, but like, what's it like to work with one? And like, I don't know if you could like give an example of that, just because I've heard you reference it a few times, but it's not something that I have ever done. And I'm definitely a little curious if you wanted to share that before we go.
Yeah. What's it feel like to work with a demon? It depends on what demon, but you can say that there is a general frequency that they all represent. And it's like if you hang out with a certain person, you take on their demeanor. That's natural, you know, like you take on their their way of looking at the world automatically, right? Energy is contagious, and when you work with a spirit, that's even more so. One of my teachers used to tell me that when you practice magic, you're creating an atmosphere around you, but you got to make sure that that atmosphere is actually good for you. So we wouldn't last long on Earth. On Mars, if that makes sense. We need Earth's atmosphere, right? So in the same way, everybody has to be aware and has to know what they're bringing into their lives. So a demon is going to bring a frequency that is, okay, how do I describe that? In 3 words. I would describe it as cynical, ruthless, and powerful. Cynical, ruthless, powerful. You start to look at the world, life, and the universe from a demonic perspective, which, like I said, is cynical. You think humans are full of shit. You can see their weaknesses. You think you think they're hypocrites, essentially, hypocritical beings. The results of what they bring into your life depends on the wording of your request. You gotta almost act like a lawyer. You gotta look at all the. You gotta what's that called? You gotta cross your T's and dot your I's. I think that's the expression. You gotta be really, really clear about what it is you want, and you gotta be clear about not being harmed through how it comes about. But then they can work literal miracles for you, like things that are completely extraordinary. And it's a powerful thing, but the important thing is that you stay in control over yourself and use it beneficially. Also, you shouldn't constantly and consistently work with them. You should balance it out with more light energy, and then you're fine, you know. But honestly, I don't even like talking about this stuff anymore because it's always misinterpreted, and people try to put you into a category, like they call me Satanist and all that stuff. I'm definitely not a Satanist. I'm none of these things. I just work with, I see it as energy, personified energy, you know, and certain energies are like more volatile, more chaotic, and certain other energies are more like balanced and harmonious. And that's how I would approach it. You know, the word demon always has these associations as, you know, like it's a very religious type of thing. And, you know, they are demons. As an occultist, I'm not religious. I see this as a science. And that's how I approach those things.
Yeah. I had a friend recently say that demons were like fire, like the element of fire. Like it can burn you, it can destroy, but it's necessary and it can keep you warm. And I thought that was an interesting way to think about it, because everything just comes down to like, it's like spirit and element. And yeah, when you're able to back away from the good versus evil paradigm and see it as all just existing and like kind of like in nature, then it definitely feels a lot more accepting. And I like how you called it a science, because that's, yeah, it's really beginning to feel like that for me.
You know what the funny thing is about this whole thing, black magic, occultism, and all that stuff? You will find everything among the whole spectrum. You'll find people that are completely delusional, and then you find the most powerful people in the world use this stuff. Guaranteed. I know a couple of them. So it is literally a tool that can be used to accomplish anything that you want, but most people don't use it like that. Most people are delusional. So they will also feed your delusion. They will also, I don't know, man. Like I try to live my life based on this. There's this French saying, "La puissance ne respecte la puissance," which means power only respects power. So essentially, the worst thing that one can do is, once again, I'm quoting my teacher. Magic that only happens or takes place in a conversation or on a piece of paper is not worth the piece of paper it's written on. And that's how it's approached. So either you do it or you don't. And if you do it, you
practice it 10 times more than you talk about it, and that's the right ratio. Less talking, more practice. That is what people need, you know. And between us, Robin, I'm like, I get invited to so many different interviews. I get invited to, it's like, well, let's collaborate with this, let's collaborate with that. I'm like, no, I don't want to be associated with you. I don't want to deal with you. I think you're a fucking weirdo. Stay the fuck away from me. And yeah, I think if you want to do this authentically, it's an individual path. You can definitely collaborate with others, but this is not about creating some consensus. This is not a religion. We're here to have our own experiences and master the stuff all around us. But I got to tell you, like, something like evocation or real mastery is transferred in a one-on-one sense. It cannot be done over the internet. It cannot be done, like, even in a group setting. It's very, very hard. Like, the real mastery and the real secrets of working with demons has to be learned in person. So I hope that everybody finds a teacher like that. I was lucky. I have very, very good teachers, but not everybody has those. So whoever's listening here, please understand that whatever book you read, you're not gonna find whatever is necessary. So try to find a person that is willing to take you on as a student and teach you as a mentor. And that is actually how it's been forever. And that is really the only way to truly learn the highest levels of it all.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I know you're very selective, so I feel so honored and just blessed that we were able to have this conversation. And you bring so much wisdom into this world. And, you know, I'm going to go back, I'm going to listen to this conversation. I'm probably going to take notes to just like really let it sink in and continue to grow in my soul path. And yeah, just kind of go for the ride. This was like such a surprise today. And as you were saying, like finding a good teacher, a good mentor is like one of the most powerful things we can do. A book can only take us so far. The real wisdom comes from spirit wisdom. And that is why I called this podcast Spirit Wisdom. It's something that we just know within. It's our embodied wisdom. It's what we've earned through our experiences. And yeah, that's really where it's at. And so you offer some services. Before you go, did you want to tell us a little bit about like what you're offering, how people can find you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to find me on YouTube, grailoftheserpent.com. The Grail of the Serpent is the name of the channel. There's also a domain, grailoftheserpent.com. However, I'm pivoting into let's call it life coaching right now. But you're going to find all details through that YouTube channel, Grail of the Serpent. If you are psychologically unhealthy, if you have issues, first of all, I'm not your daddy, okay? So you can't fucking message me 24/7. Frankly, I don't even care about your problems, okay? I'm here to teach you how to empower yourself. I'm not here to like, and I got to say that because that happens again and again and again, okay? People just think I'm their daddy because I helped them with this and that and the other, but I'm not here for you. I'm here for myself, okay? Number two, you can definitely learn things from me, but be respectful and keep your distance. If you have any psychological issues, seek out a professional. If you're not of legal age in your country, don't even bother, okay? And if you can't be respectful and you're not able to invest, then stay away from me too, okay? The rest, if you qualify with all of these things, and you know, people would say like, only the wrong people are offended by this, so I love it. So this is like the first screening that I really like to do. So if you fall under any of those categories, stay away. Don't bother. Those who understand power and understand quality know exactly that I'm the right guy to come to, because I'm going to teach you the real deal. I don't bullshit you. And if you listen to this interview, you know that I know what I'm talking about. So that's it.
Straight up spirituality. Thank you so much, Frank, for coming on. I can't wait to follow your journey and keep connecting and learning. So thank you so much.
Take care, Robin.
You too.